Tools, here's
All right.
You and Amy and the office staff are so amazing. We're so lucky to have them.
We love our board.
this is just shameless.
During budget season, I do.
Guys are awfully quiet all of a sudden. What's the deal?
We're eating.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, Trey's on his way. Yes. And this is his presentation.
Hopefully,
And what's that?
hopefully he shows up.
They just texted me and said he's 2 minutes away. Let's hope he's not speeding.
He's losing dollars every minute he's late.
He's walking in the door now.
I was gonna say I could kind of kick it off, but if he's that close, I think I'll just let him run with it.
Looks like he's running to his office. If you do got something you want to start with.
I could start with the fact that the $300,000 design and engineering grant closed. It was either today or late last week, so we are now able to draw down on that $300,000, and we're going to spend it, I think, pretty much in one fell swoop with the design and engineering that we've already paid, and so we'll be able to reimburse ourselves for that work. We just put it into the state program, and then apparently the money just sort of appears. So that'll be a good thing. And then what else can I tell you? I don't know that I have any more big news today.
All right. Well, Trey is now in the house with us.
Well, that worked out pretty well, Trey. I stalled for a minute and a half and you're here.
Nice.
Yes, I am here. Okay. So budget. Here we go with budget, everybody's favorite time of year. This is labeled enterprise fund. You probably saw on my slide presentation, I went ahead and did every fund that my department touches. So, it's a list on the front, and then the Public Works Department. I got 11 full-time crew members, 7 park, streets and irrigation, building maintenance, 4 at the water wastewater plant, 1 full-time, part-time crew member, and then we usually hire 2 seasonals through the summer. And then enterprise funds. It tells you what type of fund it is. Irrigation, wastewater, Silt Housing Authority are our 3 major enterprise funds.
Right.
And-
And Trey, I'll jump in on that just to talk briefly about what an enterprise fund is. And that is that it's a business type fund. So it accounts for activities that we charge fees to, and those fees and of course grants and things like that are used to support the activity. So it's different from a government fund, which we'll talk about. And actually, Public Works is a government fund. It uses taxes to support itself. So the difference between an enterprise fund and in broad strokes, a government enterprise fund is fees that support its activities, and a government fund is taxes. So Public Works would be a good example of that. And water wastewater is an enterprise fund. Okay, Trey.
Okay, so we're gonna start with the enterprise funds, water and wastewater. Like I said, got 4 operators. Currently, we have 1 contract operator responsible charge, and that's Tony. 2023, our budget was almost 6 million. Total 2.6 in operating, 2.4 in capital. List of things we got done last year. We started engineering Grand Avenue. Bought a new work truck with a canap bed, put mixers in 2 more of our water tanks. We've got the engineering done on the I-70 boring project. And we put new PLC controllers on the water plant and upgraded the software that runs the water plant. For wastewater, we replacing that collection line that hasn't got done yet, but it's scheduled to go here in the next couple weeks. Some new heating and air handling system out on the Headworks building. We are also putting new controllers on that plant. So all 3 boxes talk to each other now instead of not communicating. There's a picture of the new step screen that we put in this year. And we also rebuilt the classifier out there on the grit system.
Hey, Trey, could you talk a little bit about the Grand Avenue project again, in case people have forgotten what that's all about? Because that's a long-term project that we're approaching.
Yeah, we're redoing Grand Avenue all the way from Pioneer to First Street. We're gonna have to take it in sections because we have water lines, wastewater lines, irrigation lines that we need to either upgrade or replace in that whole street. So more than likely, we're gonna only be able to do like 2, maybe 3 blocks at a time as we work through this project. We're hoping before the end of the year to have phase 1 out to bid, which will be from Pioneer to probably around 16th Street for the first phase of this project.
And could you talk maybe just briefly too about the step screen? What is a step screen? What's it do? And how much did it cost?
A lot. It was close to $200,000 for that step screen and to get it installed. And it basically sets on the influent channel of the wastewater plant and collects any organics and draws them up into a dewatering press and then dumps them into a dumpster. So none of the inorganics, like toilet paper, them disposable wipes, they're not disposable. Don't flush them down the toilet, because we'll just pick them out with that thing and put them in a dumpster and they'll go to the landfill anyway.
But still, even though this will pick it out of it, don't flush that stuff down.
Yeah, because they are so much heavier than regular toilet paper. They do not flow well with the sewer system and they create backups. And we find out about backups when somebody calls and say, hey, why is this coming into my house? So it's not good for everybody, for anybody really. But yeah, that's basically what that Vulcan does, the step screen. It just takes all the stuff you don't want in your basin system out and squeezes the water out of it and puts it in a dumpster.
And last thing on this slide, Trey, for me is classifier. What's? I don't remember that project.
The classifier is on the grit system. So basically we have a big centrifuge out there that all the wastewater goes in before it goes to the basin. The centrifuge spins the heavy stuff out that the step screen might have missed, like grease, grit, things of that nature that might have went through the step screen. And then it pumps it out into this classifier and it basically does the same thing. It squeezes it all down, get the water out of it, returns the water back into the plant and dumps the grit and what's left into the dumpster that gets hauled away.
Did our guys do that rebuilding or did we have to have a contractor come and do that?
We had to have a contractor come and redo that. And yeah, that's one that wasn't technically budgeted, but one that a couple months ago we went, oh crap, that is broke. It needs fixed now type thing. And I do not remember the exact cost on that. But it was one of them that during its function, it broke and we had to get it fixed.
But there's plenty of money in the budget for surprises like that, right?
Yes,
Okay.
we had money in the budget. It wasn't like we had to build that line item up. We had enough to cover it. So.
Yeah, I was looking at the line item. We had budget expenses of beginning the year 5.1 million. And the anticipated revenues were 4.4. I just wanted to explore for the water and wastewater. So right now I was just looking at the financials that was presented with the package. It was expenditure minus budget revenues. Hopefully I'm saying it correctly, with a minus $911,000, but we do have about $1.7 million on the wastewater fund. I just wanted to know that with the rate increase, are we going to be on a good position as far as expected revenue in the budget? Are we more aligned when comes to that with the rate increase, Amy or Trey? Are you with me, Amy, on what
I
I
am.
mean when I was reading the financials?
Yes, so you are on the right track. We will be able to cover our expenses. At the end of 2024, we should still have a little bit of a fund balance available to us with that increase for the rates, which would be able to cover our current debt for the water and wastewater bonds that we have, and then our new debt as well.
So it'll be in alignment, proposably with the budget of 5.6. It'll be around that number.
Well, our
Yep.
our budget for 2024 for the water and wastewater fund is like 32 million because of the auditor. I spoke with the auditor and he wanted us to book all of the revenue and all of the expenditures in
Okay.
2024.
I see.
That's on the water plant.
That's on the water plant
Yeah.
separately.
That's why it came up to 32 million. We
Yeah.
have to show that in the budget.
The whole 28 or 27,795,000, whatever
Yeah.
change.
Okay, so when I'm looking at that number on the board, I'm looking at,
And are
That's
you looking at
without
the actual
water plant.
financials?
No, she's looking at my PowerPoint.
Oh, I see it.
Piece of wooden pipe and
Got
that is everything but the water plant. That is no numbers figured in for the water plant in that 5.6 million. That would be if we weren't having to do anything with the water plant.
That would be just normal operations and capital that we would do in a normal year.
Yeah,
And I think the second part of that question is yes, the new rate that we moved to is part of that rate increase was to get our water plant operating where it should be without supplemental for the
Right.
wastewater, plus
Yeah.
what we need to cover the new bond for the new water plant.
yes.
Because $85 a month would have been to just make us even. And in January, we're raising it to about $94. So the water plant technically is only costing the citizens $10 a month because we weren't charging what we should have been charging.
Thank you, Trey. Thank you, Amy.
You're
Yep.
welcome.
So yeah, that's the proposed budget, not taking into account the water plant. Is the 5.6 million. 9% increase from this year. We did list start construction in the new water plant in there, even though we don't show it in the numbers, that's gonna consume some staff time for sure. We're gonna finish the boring project underneath I-70. That's out to bid right now. We should have bids back in November, and you'll see that in front of you when I get all them back. We're gonna start Grand Avenue Phase 1, like I said, hoping to have that out to bid. And award that bid December, January, so we can get on their list for a spring start on that. The refurbish of Sunrise Tank 2, that tank is currently offline. We need to go in, sandblast the inside, repaint it. And also we're gonna lift that tank approximately 2 foot, make it 2 foot taller so it matches the elevation of the tank next to it. So we can fill both tanks, because currently we can't fill our big tank because we'd overflow this tank because there's about a 2 to 3 foot bust in their overflows. So, and that I should be finding out about a grant next week. I think it is when them grants come out, and I should have a grant for 70% of that, hopefully. New fan press for sludge removal. This will take the place of the belt press that we currently use. That's in that far building for those of you that's been out there. And again, that we're looking at a grant next spring to go after to help pay for that, to replace that belt press that's there. And the fan press we're putting in, you can actually get them in stages. So as that plant grows, we could add another stage and be able to handle more capacity
Oh,
with
nice.
this fan press.
Will fit in the same room.
Yes, it will. It's actually smaller than the belt press we have. So we're gonna have to make some modifications to at least the auger system to get it into the dumpsters and stuff.
Well, like the poly system in the pump, so that I'll just retrofit to it.
Yes, we had them come out and demo one of these, and they walked through our sludge building and they said everything that's currently there that we should be able to retrofit into this fan press.
Nice.
So, and then the other goals and objectives, no violations from CDPHE. We're gonna continue fixing water meters and provide quality service to the town residents. And then on issues and concerns, staff retention, changing state and federal regulations. We got a 14-inch transite main that's in service and then the residual manganese within the system. We'll have to deal with that once we get the new plant that will take manganese out. We'll have to deal with the residual that's in the system.
Can you
and
back
cut
up?
the
Yeah,
pipes.
sorry, Trey. Back up 2 slides, please. And let's talk briefly. I just want to remind everybody about the boring project. That's a water main that goes underneath I-70 and the railroad. And you'll recall that Trey was successful in getting was it 900, Trey? $1,000 grant this year for that, or 750, I forget. But
767,000.
right, and the total project cost is somewhere in the order of 9. But
The total
obviously-
project, the total project cost is in the area of 1.6 million.
Oh, okay, okay. But the point I was gonna make is that this replaces a water line, and I think it pairs nicely with the new a new water plant that'll be coming online in a couple, I don't know, 18 months or maybe a couple of years from now, but it'll be good to have a new clean pipe in there to transport that water into the system.
And this is what, currently 10-inch going into there, or 12?
Currently, there's a 10-inch
Okay,
ductile
10-inch.
underneath the railroad and the interstate,
And what size are you going to?
12-inch.
12, okay.
I just have a quick question on the Sunrise tank.
Yes.
Are we actually lifting the existing tank or extending it so it's the same height?
Due to the engineering and everything, they will jack it up and put new plates on the bottom. Is how they described it to me, because the size of plating they used is to handle the pressure of the tank at 24 feet or whatever the height is. So if you take it up to 26 feet, you're adding more pressure, and the bottom panels weren't designed for that. So they said it's better to jack it up and put a new ring on the bottom.
Okay.
All right.
How does that work? How do they get underneath it to connect the pipe or into the tank? Or is it?
They don't.
I've
They'll
not
cut
seen it
it
right.
they'll cut it from the floor,
Uh-huh.
raise the sides of it, put in, and then weld a new
Oh, okay.
end and set it back down and weld it.
Okay, gotcha.
Banding
Okay,
down.
all right.
Banding down.
Bending down,
Okay.
throwing
Uh,
down.
Yeah.
That's-
And then it looks like we will probably put a new floor in it too while they're at it. Cause it could probably use that. But
And then how are we doing with backflow compliance as far as CDPHE violations?
we are at 100% now with the backflow.
Nice.
Victor has done an outstanding job with that program.
Great.
And we are at 100% at the moment. So our violation has went away. We've submitted all that. And we don't have to, well, the violation hasn't went completely away, but they lifted, we don't have to notify it every quarter. When we turn in the report in January, the violation will go completely away.
Okay.
But at the moment, we don't have to report every quarter and send out notifications to everybody every quarter that happened.
All right. And did we inform all the customers that they have to have that tested yearly?
Yes.
Okay. But I think that's the biggest thing now that we're there is the continued education of what the
And
expectation is. So,
Victor worked with Tom from Zankinella and Associates, and they have a program, and Victor can bring it up on the computer, and when anybody goes out of date, it actually comes up red on the spreadsheet. So Victor can get on them, and he starts like a month before they're due. And hey, you need to get this, and then when they expire, we've been shutting them off. And that gets their attention, and it gets tested pretty quickly after that.
Good system.
So is there a company that tests, or does Victor test for them?
No, we outside companies, and we have a list on our website of a list of companies that will do that we give them.
Now, how many devices do you guys have? Just ballpark, doesn't have to be.
120,
Oh, okay.
because every commercial property has it. And then I want to say 100. And then, of course, everybody up in Iron Horse
Iron
has it
Horse.
because they water with domestic water.
So, are you planning on budgeting for I believe it's Reg 85 or Reg 100 for the nutrient removal down here to start thinking about that for the future? I'm sure
In the
there's gonna-
wastewater?
I'm sure there's gonna be costs associated with that.
Yes, we have actually, we're looking at that. We're also looking at getting an RFQ out for a engineering firm to come in and help us figure out what we need to do. We're not sure what it's gonna take. We do know that Aeromod, which is what our plan is, supposedly has a new treatment system that will retrofit into ours and will be able to meet them regulations. I haven't seen one in use. I haven't seen a ton on it, other than if it will work for us, it's only a $6 to $8 million fix instead of a $60 million fix.
I like that, yeah.
So,
Sold.
well, I want to see one. I want to see one that works. I want to see their testing on it, because I don't want to pay $6, $8 million for a new process and then find out we're not going to meet the requirements. And we just,
And then spend 60.
Yeah.
yeah.
Aeromod is actually the company's name or the brand.
Yes, Aeromod is the company name. We have an Aeromod returned activated sludge
You can
plant.
probably see videos on YouTube probably,
Well, it sounds like it's fairly new. I don't know how many they have in plants yet. So that's, once we break ground on the water plant, that's my next task, is to start on the wastewater plant and figure out what we're really gonna need, when we're gonna need it by. And we've already talked to, like I talked to Senator Will and some other people, and we're trying to get that waiver open back up to maybe we can push it off some more years while we figure out exactly what we need.
what was that regulation called? Was it 100 or was it 85 or 85?
Is reg 85 and 31.
Yeah, 31 was for a million over, right?
Yeah.
Gallons over.
Yep.
So that's happening in 2024 is the discussion and the thought on trying to get that forward for the wastewater plant.
Yeah, because we figure we're gonna have our survey on the wastewater plant in 26-ish is when we think ours is due, right in that neighborhood. And from talking to other municipalities, when they come in, if we get moved to this reg 85, they usually give you 5 or 6 years, so we'll need it by like 2033, give or take, unless we can get some waivers or something going to push it down the road a little bit, but
And how many years would that waiver get us?
well, the original waiver that came out pushed it off till 2043, 2044. So it could buy us another 10 years possibly. But not for sure if we can get it.
I know, I hope we can.
Yeah,
I
it'd be
mean,
nice if we can, and be nice if this Aeromod process shows good results and we can do a $6 million fix and
Oh, yeah,
make things meet regulations and not have to
yeah.
basically scrap everything and go again.
And you're saying this is so new, it hasn't really been,
Yeah, it's only been out like a year or two from my understanding. And like I said, I've looked at it, but I haven't really looked into it because I've been I wanted to get the water plant done before I tackled
yeah.
the next plant. So,
is there any time frame that we would have some indication of this waiver?
well, January, what is it? January legislation goes back in. So hopefully I can have some more conversations with our representatives and senators at the state level and see what they can do to help us. And we're talking to other small municipalities that might have to meet this regulation too, and seeing if we can't get some of us all together and petition for it instead of just one, get
No, that's a good idea, yeah.
a few more.
We've really only scratched the surface on that process because we have a water plant to get buttoned up, and we've been focused on that, but we have been working kind of like Trey says in the margins, trying to get people interested in talking about it. And I think we've got some folks who are understand what what we're thinking, and they're willing to step in and work with us on it.
Oh, yes, I understand. Yeah, water plant first priority, but at least if you got
Yeah.
that waiver, then you could breathe a sigh of relief for a little while. you know.
Yeah,
And then have some money budgeted, because after this water plant experience, everything's expensive. You know.
For sure.
And
yeah,
that,
totally. Nothing's cheap in my world, unfortunately. Any other questions on water, wastewater, any projects?
were you, I thought there was another truck you're gonna get, or a piece of equipment or something?
Yes, we're getting another work truck this year,
This year, okay.
this year. We'll probably November or December, we might take it. Cause again, and next week, we'll find out on a mini grant for $25,000 that will go towards that truck. So what, the first two, I think were right around 55,000. So 25,000 of it would be covered with the grant.
I got nothing else.
All right.
Oh, well, I have one question.
Yep.
The just on a side note, yeah, continue to fix meters. Just you guys are reading them with a drone, and how does that work? Does that
With the drone, we've taken, it used to take almost 2 days, day and a half to read meters. We can send the drone up in 3 flights, and in 4 hours, we're up to close to 90% of the town read in 4 hours. And then they spend another 4 hours driving around picking up the outliers.
Oh, okay.
So we took meter reading from basically 16 hours, 2 days, and we can do it in 8 hours or less now.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah.
And that is, you guys do it in-house. It's not like there's a contract or anything.
No,
for that.
we do it
Okay.
in-house. We actually own the drone that flies.
Thank you.
Anything else? Are you ready to move on to the next one?
Irrigation, do it.
Irrigation. You can see the budget in 2023, 337 for operating, 76,000 for capital. The projects we completed in 2023, radio controls on all the pump stations, tank readouts up at the town shop, which we can go into the town shop now, and it gives us the footage readout on all 5 of our irrigation tanks, right? 4, sorry, my bad, 4. So it helps us spot problems faster. If we see a tank that's really low, we know which pump stations are probably giving us the issue, and we can go to there. You can see our 2024 budget, 400,000, 10% increase. We're gonna try to get another work truck next year. We have some water rights that came available, and we're trying to get them. They're out of the Cactus Valley ditch. There's like a share and a half out there, and we've been talking with the gentleman to try to get them, and that's probably gonna be $25,000 to $35,000 for that share and a half. Give or take. And then also, I don't know, those of you who are aware, they have changed how you can get a CDL. You can no longer train in-house. You have to send them to a school, and they have to go through that school and drive with somebody from that school to get a CDL now. So currently we have 4 CDL drivers. 2 of them are over at the water wastewater plant. One's up at Public Works, and I'm the other one. So we have somebody who's interested in getting his CDL. So we budgeted, the whole class and everything runs about $5,000. So we put it in a couple different budgets to try to get at least one person into a class to get his CDL. Issue and concerns. you know, water rights always, that's an ever ongoing battle constantly. And then pipe capacity. And that's part of the grand project. We're upsizing irrigation pipe because we have, right now, we have plenty of water rights to supply this town. We just don't have enough pipe in the ground to move the water. And if you remember, we did that project up 7th Street and we laid new pipe in. That helped tremendously. But now we got to get more bigger pipe in on that side of the town to bring in Davis Point water. So we're upsizing that all the way to 13th Street where it turns into an 8-inch pipe going up 13th. Because currently it's only like a 6-inch pipe coming down Grand. So we're gonna upsize it to 8 all the way to the 13th, and then we'll have 8 all the way to the tank. And that should, if Davis Point's running full bore with what we can, that 8-inch pipe will carry it.
And are you planning on doing that next year? Or is that just a few more years down the road?
What?
Upsizing the,
We're gonna do that Grand Avenue project that I was discussing in the
Uh-huh.
water. That's kind of hitting water, irrigation, wastewater and streets.
oh, okay.
Because we're gonna do it all as we come and put a new road on
Uh-huh.
top of it.
Okay.
So,
Okay,
That 1.6 project.
no, the 1.6 million is
Boring.
the boring project under the interstate. This one, we're probably gonna do like 400,000 at a time, give or take. Because the last time I estimated to go from Pioneer all the way to First Street, we were looking at probably close to $4 million for a project, give or take, and that estimate's 3 or 4 years old, so it could be closer to 5 at this point because of pricing. So that's why we're hoping to have it engineered to 9th Street. And then we're gonna break it out into smaller chunks that we can budget yearly for and be able to afford in the budget. And just work our way down Grand till we get to First Street.
and that's close to a mile, isn't it? Somewhere in there.
Pretty close. So it's gonna be a couple year project for sure. Unless something major happens and we get more money than we know what to do with.
And those new apartments on the east end of town, they,
Okay,
on the south side of the roundabout, I forget the name. Are they on the town's water? Do they have their own separate irrigation?
they are connected to the town system, so if that ever happens. But currently the Valvish, we gave them water to get the roundabout going. But as they're building them apartments, they will have a pump and their own irrigation system coming out of the ditch.
Oh, okay.
The town did get the water rights, I believe. So basically they gave us the water rights out of the ditch and we're technically leasing it back to them. But they're gonna have a pump station and they will take care of all the irrigation around that
Oh, okay.
apartment complex. And just FYI, so you know, Stony Ridge did approach the town about taking over their irrigation system. So I have been talking to them about that.
And I'm assuming we'd get all the water rights.
That's what I told them. I was like, I told them I need to know what water rights they have, how many of them. We had to get the elevations of the tanks because their tank would be tied in with the Eagles View tank. And we need them elevations to be close or we're gonna have issues overflowing tanks or not being able to use the capacity we have. So we're looking at numerous different things. So I'll update you as it goes, but at the moment, and it'll come to you guys before a yay or nay. But I'm trying to get a lot of preliminary work to make sure it's even feasible before I bring it to you guys, because there's a lot of odds and ends that we need to know about, or it's not even gonna be feasible
Yeah.
to tie it in with the town system.
So where else could Stony Ridge get their water if the pump canal didn't run?
They actually have, their water rights are tied to that east lateral.
So they can come, but it's pumped in. Does it come backwards from the east lateral then? Or I thought he went through the pump canal, the whole thing.
They have been pulling all, from what I was told, they have been pulling all their water from the pump canal because they said they can never get their water from the east lateral because it gets siphoned by other people before it gets to them. And I was like, well, that's pretty simple to fix.
Cause there's.
If
'cause
it's your water, you go tell them, no, that's my water.
Because at the last water board meeting, there's talk of if we have another wet year, a good year, the pump canal might not even run.
Yeah, their water rights are tied to that
So they could come from there.
east lateral, and I think they run down ditch 19, if you know
Yeah,
ditch
I
19.
thought so, but we couldn't remember. And I thought, well, I was gonna bring that up
Yeah.
because it's a possibility that because of the cost of that pump canal, they
Yeah,
might
that
not even
pump
run it next year. If there's another, if it's a good year,
If it's a good year,
might just eliminate
But-
it, not do the pump canal. So then I said, well, Stony Ridge would really be the basic one.
yeah, but if they've got water rights out of ditch 19,
19, they can come.
it's just a matter of telling them, no,
That's been cleaned. That's clean, isn't it? And stuff in the 19?
yeah.
That's what I thought.
So that's another reason I wanted to know everything, I want to know the water rights, their tank size, their tank elevation. Because it looks like preliminary, them tanks are 5 to 10 feet off in elevation from each other. So that's gonna create a problem if they're tied into the same system.
Yeah.
So we've got to figure out exactly. But yeah, like I said, that it's a work in progress, and until we get some more information, not for sure how feasible it's gonna be and what it's gonna take.
And they have a buried tank, don't they?
Yes. And I think their tank is actually higher than our Eagle View tank,
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
so.
We're updating all of these in the master plans, right, Trey? Remember a while ago, we worked in all of the master plans?
Yes,
Okay,
we do need to update that master plan more than what we have. For
I-
sure, but
yeah,
some of it's in there, some of it's not.
yeah, that's fine. You guys have been extremely busy working so many different projects, but I think it's a powerful tool. And I'm sorry to say the bare minimum, right? You guys have been so busy. But it's important to keep those plans as we can, of course.
Yeah.
It's good to refer back to them. I love that we talked about water rights today because that's a subject that I feel we haven't talked about in a while, but I haven't been here for a year, so it's good to keep that in the forefront.
And these water rights that we're talking about are irrigation
Irrigation.
water, not domestic. Cause that's two different pools of water rights,
Mhm.
as if water rights aren't complicated enough. Any other questions on irrigation? Okay, Housing Authority. So as you know, we run the Silt Senior Center over there, and also in the Housing Authority is the apartment condo up at Skyline that Jeff utilizes. Basically this year, we didn't do a whole lot other than general maintenance, replacing the stoves and refrigerator as they went out. General maintenance, we've had some issues with the air conditioning over there. We're trying to figure out what we can do to get that fixed, or what we're gonna have to do to fix that. You can see that's part of the 2024 budget. We're increasing it by 9%. And the majority of that is going to be trying to fix these air conditioning units because they are not functioning properly. And figure out exactly what we need to do to get all of that straightened out. And then also, we're gonna work with the Housing Authority on more grants. Because when you look at the issues and concern, plumbing is a huge issue over there. They're all cast iron pipes. They're starting to get thin. We're starting to get backups more and more. We are pulling, as garbage disposals go out, we're not putting them back in because that building wasn't designed to handle garbage disposals. So they never should have been put in the first place. So as they go out, we're just telling the people, no, we're not replacing them. Because the system's not designed to handle that. So, you know, and the electrical is the original electrical, so if we're gonna have to rip walls out to do plumbing, would it make sense to do electrical at the same time? And then how do we relocate the residents during construction? Can we do half the building at a time and only have to move 10 of them? Or do we move all 20 of them out, get it done and go back in? And do we look at remodeling the rooms while we're in there ripping the walls out, trying to put in new plumbing and electric? So there's a bunch of different, you know, and the big one on that is gonna be the grant money. Because I mean, that's gonna be a huge project. And the biggest cost is going to be rehousing 10 to 20 people for 4 or 5 months while this work gets done.
Yeah. I mean, the building is 40 years old, so I mean, it's
Yeah,
everything in it.
Yeah, in a perfect world, you're probably gonna be looking at least 6 months,
yeah.
you know, and I know it.
Unless you can work a deal with the hotel and. you
Yeah,
know,
so-
give some reduced rates or something.
And that's why we wanna talk to the housing authority, see what kind of grants that they might have access to. Because I mean, this is gonna be a multi-million-dollar project easily. To replace plumbing and electric, and if we get enough money, do we remodel some of the rooms? Or just replace the plumbing and electric and put drywall up? And with the plumbing, we're looking at putting new fixtures in because it's the original fixtures. Most of them are step-in tub and shower, not the most friendly environment at a senior living home to step into a tub and shower. And then also we have one room that's completely ADA compliant. Do we need another one? And is that room, it was ADA compliant in 86, 87? Is it still ADA compliant now? Or do we need to do some changes to it for that reason? So a lot of moving parts on that
Yeah.
one.
Sell it and build a new one, start over.
So the AC over there that you're having trouble with, is that all the mini splits?
Yes,
So those aren't that old.
no, they're not.
So do you know if there's manufacturer's warranties left on those? 'Cause I don't think the company's in business anymore.
The company is not in business anymore. And we've been looking at manufacturer warranties and it looks like we don't have, they're expired as well.
Okay.
And, we're working with a couple people and getting their ideas on what we can do. Some of them, they're saying that some of the issues with a few of them, the lines, the, line lengths are too long. And by the time it gets from the compressor up to the head, it's warmed up and not doing anything, and that's why they're not working. So we either need to add another one to run them units and then just run that other unit with whatever's there, or I mean, we haven't 100% came up with the game plan, but that's kind of what it looks like needs to be done. Some of them line lengths are just too long.
It's too long.
Does every unit have its own heat pump unit? Or are they
No.
shared?
Every 5 units run off the same compressor outside.
Oh, okay.
So, currently we tell them not to use them as heat. And just use the boiler system that's in place. Cause it's gonna do a lot better than them heat pumps. And it saves the confusion because if one person goes to heat, everybody else is locked out if they want air conditioning or anything else. And we get that in the summer, people are like, it's flashing this code. Okay, one of your neighbors has turned theirs to heat and it's locked everybody else out of the air conditioning. So we gotta go over there and knock on doors and get everybody switched back to air.
Can the thermostats be put on, locked up and put on auto?
Well, not really, because then they're not able to control the temperature in their own unit.
But, oh, I see, yeah, that's right, it's separate, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can only, they're either gonna heat or they're gonna cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're not doing both, so.
and we actually looked at one option. Put in like you see in hotels, the individual in each room.
P-tax, yeah.
But we don't have enough power coming into that building from XL. So that would take a new transformer power line to bring more power into that building. So that got kind of pricey in a hurry.
Yeah.
And put it up
Yeah.
for sale.
So we're looking at, and as part of the plumbing upgrades, we need to fix that boiler system over there. The boilers are brand new, they're working great. It's the individual units. Because if some of them, they don't have isolation valves. So if the spring valve that actually runs the heat in a unit goes out, we have to take the whole system down in the whole building, cut that valve out and put a new valve in. So it needs some attention.
Some attention.
Yeah, it would be really nice if we could afford to build a new one. You know, and then remodel this one when it's empty and
Just the biggest thing is finding land to build a new one,
exactly.
you know, because like this one, they like it there because it's close to the bus stops.
Yeah.
It's close to downtown. And just finding another piece of property that you could build. It would be nice.
Yeah, there's that church first and now. I mean, I'm not saying they're selling the thing. I'm just saying there's land.
Yeah. Yep. And that is it for enterprise funds. Does anybody have any questions on enterprise funds? Or any of the budgets or anything you want to see?
No,
Think we need to look at?
I had one quick question. You know, with the issues, concerns with the water, wastewater staff retention, are you having a high rate of turnover or?
No, we're not, but when you get calls on a regular basis from other municipalities wanting, I mean, I've even been, because I'm an operator, been reached out to. And some of the money that they're offering for operators, it could look real enticing to some people. So, and and Sam can,
Oh, yeah.
there's such a shortage of operators right now that it's a good business to get into if you ever thought about it. Cause there is a shortage and you could be hired, heck, you could lose your job one day and have a new one by the end of the day. I mean,
There's headhunters coming after us, getting offered all the time.
yep,
I think what keeps me around is the quality of life and retirement and things like that, which town of Silt can definitely, compete with, I would think.
Yeah.
With, time
and
off and
that's been the biggest thing that my guys have told me, that they're happy where they're at. They like working here. They like living here. And when they start looking at some of these offers, it comes down to the benefits. Yeah, they might be offering more money, but there's not the benefits, and they like working here and they enjoy working here. So no, we're not having a problem at the moment, but
Just something you always want to have on your radar. and
Yeah.
taking care of
But
it.
on your, yeah.
with the market the way it is for operators,
it's good being proactive for any business and showing your employees that you're putting them for the forefront,
Yeah.
hard work for sure.
yeah. And that's the same way with Public Works too. Everybody's happy here. They like it, and most of them, they got tired of driving up Valley. They wanted
Yeah.
a job closer to home that they didn't have to drive to Aspen for. So that helps a lot with a lot of my crew on both sides, on
There's
water.
something to be said
Yeah.
for not spending 2 hours of your day in a car that you're not getting paid for.
Yes,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, I'd make the assumption that, you have a lot of employees that have been here for years and years and years, so most likely they're not going anywhere. I
more,
guess,
but
that's-
but you never know,
you
like
never
I
know,
said,
exact-
that market for operators is starting to get pretty intense, and you never know when it's gonna happen.
Everybody has
Yeah.
a price.
Yep.
Exactly.
Does Bryce, yeah.
Yep.
I was at a conference last week with about 500 plumbing companies that are just in that room. We figured we needed 20,000 employees to get those companies up to full staff.
Wow.
Yep.
So
Yeah, and long-term employees, they will usually give you an indication if they are thinking about leaving, you know. Somebody ever mentioned something as far as we could potentially see as something that would be beneficial for us to offer as a benefit for the employee, you as the director, please, Trey, talk to us, bring it up, and then we'll evaluate.
when they did with the most recent survey that we did, employee survey, and Jerry and I are on that HR subcommittee, which I'm sure we'll be discussing the changes.
Okay.
Budget meetings about the stuff that we're gonna add to
Implement,
or start
add.
offering, yeah, so
Yes.
it's
Yes.
expensive to train new employees, so
Yes, it
Uh-huh.
is.
keep the ones we can.
Yeah. And on here, you mentioned the 14-inch transit main, you know, the concrete asbestos pipe. That, have you had problems recently with it?
No,
Just because I was just wondering, just because I know it's an issue of concern because it's old and, you know,
and that, again,
yeah.
we have not had issues with it. Because that's one of them that thing breaks and I might go on a permanent vacation.
Staff
but-
retention, yeah.
But and that's, again, that's another project that you're probably looking at $6-7 million to fix.
Oh, yeah.
So it's something that, while it's not a problem now, it's something that need to keep
Yeah.
at least looking at as we move
No, I'm glad,
forward.
yes, exactly. I'm glad you're thinking about it.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
oh, and that's with the Grand project, not that all of you know the system, but I know Chris does. We are moving that irrigation line and that water line between them two houses. We're gonna move it where it cuts across into Lion subdivision.
Oh, yeah.
We're abandoning them in place and we're gonna run them lines down Grand. So we don't have to worry
Oh,
about
yeah,
them
where it goes
being in
through the-
between.
yeah, okay.
We've got a 12-inch main and a 6-inch irrigation main that run in between two houses in about a 20-foot gap. And that's where they put them in. And we are moving them out into the middle of Grand. So if we ever have issues, we're not gonna sink a couple of houses before we can get it shut down.
Yeah.
And that's, I understand why they put it there, kind of, but something about having pressurized mains running between two houses just doesn't
Well, yeah,
seem like
how
a
do you
great
get back
idea.
there to fix it? You know, if you have to get big equipment in there, how do you, yeah.
Yeah. So the sewer line's gonna have to stay because of gravity. But I'm not too worried about it breaking and
Yeah,
flooding houses like a 12-inch water main would.
that's true. Good thought.
So. Anything else?
I just want to throw it out there, for the Silt senior housing, when. And it doesn't, just so we have a timeline of when we would be thinking about more seriously coming up with a plan. Just to put that in the back of our minds.
Well, I'm
whether it is within
hoping.
A year or,
I'm hoping by next year to at least be having some meetings with the housing authority
housing.
and starting to work towards trying to apply for some of these grants that are out there.
Because you did mention quite a few different projects that need to take place eventually, let's just call it that, as of right now. So just having kind of like an idea of what that plan looks like. Do you think that that would be helpful once you're having that conversation with the housing authority?
And it's going to depend on the grants, when they're available, when we can apply for them,
Mhm.
how long you can hold that grant before you have to spend it. That's going to dictate a lot of the timeline on that.
Okay,
Once I sit down and talk with them and we find out grants and which grants and the matches for grants and whether they're gonna have money to help us match the grant, if we're gonna match the grant. And then we'll figure out applying for them. So if I talk to them next year, and we find these grants, but we have to match so much money, we would probably apply for the grant in 2025. So next year in the budget process, we can put that money in the budget for 2025
Mhm.
and then apply for the grant, get it in 2025 and start the process, so to speak.
So basically, you're saying that you have a pretty good idea of what projects need to take place to be taking that conversation and presenting
Yes.
in an order that they would potentially evaluate and approve without having to have anything physical. Hey, here's what I need to, get it fixed first or second.
Yeah. And with senior housing, we're gonna have to fix it all at once. Cause I
Okay.
don't know that we can go in, rip walls out, put new plumbing in, put new walls up and then come back, rip walls out again and put electric in.
So you
It
approach
would be
them, yeah.
counterproductive
Uh-huh.
to pay for them to drywall it twice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Well, and also displacing the residents twice too,
yes,
or longer, whichever way you wanna look at it.
yeah. So there's a lot of moving parts and until I get with the housing authority and we start going
Step
after
one.
grants and things like that, it's gonna be kind of fluid. But I wouldn't expect anything until 2025. So that way we know what our match might need to be, what kind of grants are out there and things of that nature.
Okay.
Do we have any sort of plan in case there is some catastrophic failure or something in there?
Not yet. We've talked about some different things, but we're working on trying to get a concrete plan if something drastic happens.
Yeah. I hope it doesn't, but I just,
Yeah,
if you have to, move a bunch of people in a hurry, I just.
That was it, Trey. Thank you.
okay. Continue. I mean, we said enterprise funds tonight, but I have like our trust fund and our impact funds and everything else, if you guys want to talk about them.
Might as well.
Sure, yeah, the more we get done tonight,
That's
the
fine.
less
Yeah, the more.
we have to do another.
Knock them out.
Okay. So the next one's the Conservation Trust Fund. It was established by House Bill 74-1084. It's basically through DOLA, publicly owned sites. It's funded with lottery. A lot of this budget we do use out at the Silt River Preserve. We also used it this year and the last couple of years to do trails in town. As you can see in the 2023 budget. We did improvements out at the River Preserve and they're still ongoing. We have a big one that hopefully will be done here in the next month or so. We're putting a arched walkway in over two of the ponds. Two of the ponds are connected by a channel and we're putting an archway over that to connect the trails so you can walk up and over the waterway that connects both ponds. And we did the trails at Eagles View Park this year with money out of this budget. The year before we did Flying Eagle Park. So next year we're budgeting pretty much 30,000. We're gonna try to get the trail up 16th Street done. We're gonna do more work out at the preserve on trails. And then we're gonna try to get a viewing deck. The pond you're looking at is what we call pond 9. For some reason, the ponds are labeled 8, 9, and 10 out there. I don't know where 1 through 7 went, but this is pond 9. This is our biggest pond. And basically to the left of this picture, you can't really see it. There's like a knob that sticks 7, 8 foot up above this pond. And we're hoping to go out there and put a covered deck, a covered seating area so you can sit underneath there and look out over the pond with possibly an observation deck that kind of extends out over the pond. So you can kind of walk out there and hopefully get to see some of the wildlife that Dan Young showed us in his presentation. So that's one of the big things we're gonna try to get done out there next year.
Nice.
All right.
Any questions on the River Preserve or? Okay,
16th Street Trail,
yes,
or is that
The one going up to Mesa View.
Oh, okay. You're just gonna repave that? Sorry, I wasn't
Yeah, that's fine.
listening.
That's what we're hoping to repave that
Nice.
and fix it, so. The next one is the Park Impact Fee Fund. It was an ordinance in 2011. New single multifamily residence units be assessed a park and rec impact fee per dwelling unit to defray the cost of improving parkland within the town from new construction. So this year, we hit that fund pretty hard. I believe Amy said we took it down to almost $2,000. And that was the Eagles View Park, which you see there. We completely redid that. And for next year, there is no plans to use any money out of this fund. We will let it rebuild and let it get some money back in it. And then at a later date, later year, we'll see what's in there and use it again, so to speak. So there's not a whole lot on that one. I will throw out something that we'll talk in Parks and Rec. I know with new development, they're required to bring parkland in. I want to talk about some of these new developments are putting in these little parks that just have benches. We have parks that are not getting used. And I know we want open space, but at some point, we take care of 16 parks right now in this little town. At some point, do we let a development come in and say, no parkland, but you're paying the in lieu of fee? So we can take that money and improve some of these parks that are already here and get them better so more people use them, instead of putting in more parks that people aren't going to use. It's just something to think about. We'll talk about it in Parks and Rec subcommittee. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Is there a mathematical ratio number that says per capita, how many parks is ideal or should be recommended, or there's it?
I would have to look that up. I'm sure somebody somewhere has put a number to it.
Yeah, just wondering if we're,
But
yeah,
sounds like we might be approaching that if we have, parks not being used, but I don't know.
yeah, we have some parks that just don't get used. And I mean, it's nice to have them as open space, but it gets to a point where how many do you need? And if we could get money to make some parks better, would that be better than having somebody put a new park in to maintain?
yeah, because there's some, well, like the one on the east end of town. There's no parking. You can't really.
Yeah, it's right
use it
along
unless
Highway
you-
6.
Yeah, unless you walk through it, you can't really use it. So that one, I can see why that one doesn't get used, because
Yeah,
There's nothing there.
there's, yeah.
There's a couple of them that's what
Yeah.
it is. That it was set up as a park to satisfy a requirement of
Requirement, yeah.
something, but the park itself is not desirable to be used. Like you're saying, if we could take and put some funds towards refurbishing those, making those better, then that might be something.
Or even a recreation, rec center fund or something.
Yeah.
That, I like that idea more than anything.
exactly. But just something that we'll discuss, of course, at Parks and Rec subcommittee. But if
Didn't,
you have any ideas, Andrea and Justin are on that. You can talk to them about it. I know we have a meeting coming up,
Monday,
huh?
Monday, the 16th.
Yep, Monday, the 16th. I knew it was close, but I couldn't remember.
Yeah,
so-
and to trustee Flores' point, the per capita studies would be interesting to have. I do know the company that did our master plan for Parks and Recreation. I don't know if that company, we could still reach out to them. They
Yeah.
did a very comprehensive plan for us. Because if you're bringing in new development, you're potentially bringing new people. So it is important to keep that frame of mind as well, that while you're increasing the amount of parks that you need to maintain, you're also bringing new population to town that most likely, depending on the per capita study, may be using the parks and
Yeah.
may want to have that quality of life that we also want to maintain. So we'll balance that out and have further discussions about it for sure.
I Googled it and it's anywhere between 9 acres to 10.8 acres per 1,000 people.
Yeah, I guess it depends on how big the
How big
project
park
is.
30
too.
acres of park is a lot of park.
Well, the river preserve's 133 acres, so we're
Yeah.
covered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it also says that the typical park and rec agency offers one park for every 2,200 residents.
Oh my
So
goodness,
we
so we have to-
more than meet that requirement.
Uh,
So
Yeah, I'd be in favor of something like that, but the fund in lieu of, does it go to the park impact fee or does that go to another?
I believe
where does
it,
Go.
I would have to look where that is. in
Something we'd have
ordinance.
to figure out. I'm gonna talk to Attorney Sawyer possibly, or
Well, Nicole could probably tell us, cause she's the one that deals with them fees all the time. But there is a parkland in lieu of fee, and I think it should go to the park impact.
I would think so.
Yeah, that's what I was assuming. I
But
just wanted.
I would have to do more research on that one and not tell you wrong.
you don't wanna guess?
No, not on that one. I can guess on a lot of things and be pretty close, but not that one. All right, and then the next one, unless you have more on parks, is the construction impact fund. It's also another ordinance from 2011. And it's applications for annexation pays this, impact existing town facilities, staff resources. So last year, we used some of it to help Eagles View Park. We also bought a new lawnmower with it. And next year, we're just looking to buy a new trailer for lawnmowers with that. So that is about all that's in the construction impact fund.
Oh yeah, back to park splash pad. There, I didn't forget to say it.
For the beautification fund, would it be worthwhile looking into, now that we have a lawnmower, hiring either a seasonal company during the spring and summer to do maintenance within like weeds in town to keep it clear and clean? I'd like to talk about that as far as the beautification. We walk around the paths, and there are a lot of like places that I believe it may just belong to us. That has just a lot of weeds. I see it's very clean around the parks, mostly if I'm walking around the little park near Ballard or the Veterans Park, which I walk a lot around those paths. But if you go farther up towards the middle school or you just see a lot of like in the spring, like
That-
they're higher.
That is something that with our new public safety officer, is that his official name? Code enforcement.
Yeah.
Basically.
Or-
A lot of that you see along the path on Grand is actually homeowners. They're supposed to maintain to the road. So we're looking at that, trying to figure out what we can do to help some of what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I feel that even if I bring some pictures and, share with Jeff and just on the areas that I'm observing, it may just be beneficial to just have a look at it and then evaluating what we can do, and if
Yeah.
it is our responsibility, maybe coordinate to just get it done or enforce as a code.
Yep.
To have a beautiful town. I think Silt's amazing, and I think the more beautiful we can make Silt look, that's a form of attraction for people to come in and visit, for businesses to come in, and stay. I think beautification is a huge part of it.
Yep.
Yeah. I agree, like on Highway 6 out by the Trade Center. It'd be nice to find a way to pipe that someday, then you can just run the mower over the top of it. You don't have that huge, 4-foot ditch. to
Oh,
clean.
okay, yeah, right there going into Lions,
Yeah,
for sure. That is a steep ditch. But the beautification fund was an ordinance in 2008. It's 2.5% on lodging tax.
It's 5% now, Trey.
5%.
Yeah, it's 5. I was gonna say that number's wrong.
Hey.
Just
no.
dawned on me that that number was wrong. It's 5%. And it goes into the beautification fund. This year, the beautification fund bought the new trash cans. I don't know if you've seen them. We're starting to get them put out. The horseshoe pits that have got a lot of attention. The park shelters that we put up at Eagles View, we have a new one at Veterans, and there's also one out at the Silt River Preserve. And of course, it buys the flowers on Main Street every year. That gets planted, and it's nice. We have a 4-H club that will plant them every year as their community service project. So Sustainable Growers is the 4-H club. And for the last probably 3 or 4 years, they've planted all of our flowers on Main Street as their community project. The pedestrian bike overpass design came out of that. And also next year it'll come out of that. And that's about all that we have in that fund. Okay. From Nicole, to go back to parks real quick. Park impact per house is $1,193. And park in lieu of is market value and the board's decision at the time of agreement.
Oh, okay. Cool. Thanks, Nicole.
Yes, thank you, Nicole. Any questions on beautification?
Nope.
I don't, how are we doing on time?
We've got
Amazing.
13 minutes.
13 minutes.
Well, we're done with all the funds but the governmental fund and the general fund. And
About how many years do you guys get out of a lawnmower? Just out of curiosity.
I'm trying to remember when we bought them Hustlers. We've had them Hustlers now for 7 years and they're all still running good except for the one we had to replace. And somebody decided it needed a bath and it ended up in the
Oh no.
irrigation ditch.
I know I was gonna say something involved with water.
Yeah,
Oh no.
yeah. That was a fun day. I get a picture from somebody and I see the bottom of a lawnmower floating in the irrigation ditch and I'm like, oops. I was like, is everybody okay? And we
Yeah.
did get it running again. James actually did get it drained out. It died when it went in, so it didn't suck a lot in. We replaced all the fluids and we actually got another year and a half out of it before it
Oh well.
finally gave it up. But yeah, that was, so we probably get close to 10 years or more out of
Uh-huh.
them.
Oh,
Cause
okay.
them Hustlers are still in pretty good shape and they're running great.
Nice.
All looks good to me.
So Trey, what do we have left on this slideshow? We we talked
General-
about governmental funds already, so maybe
We have,
got-
we have general fund, building admin, streets, parks, and public work, maintenance. Or shop maintenance. What's the name of that account? Geez.
Vehicle,
Vehicle maintenance. Thank you, Amy.
you're welcome.
Hi.
So does board want to take 10 or do you want to plow on and try to get a couple more of these done?
Keep going.
Keep going.
I'm good. Everyone else good?
Yeah, we can keep going.
I'm game.
Okay.
Trey, talk about buildings.
Yep. Administration, building operations, that's basically everything here at Town Hall. just general maintenance. We replaced some computers. Sheila and Amy usually handle the computer replacement. Next year, our budget, we're looking at trying to put all new windows in this place that actually work. And also we wanted to redo the front door. Because we're starting to have major issues with the ADA buttons and controllers and everything else. And that's pretty much the general the building operations. It's not a huge budget compared to some of them that I deal with, but that's what it controls.
And plumbing and electric and all that's good here.
Good enough.
Oh,
Let's put it that way. It's working. And then we go into Public Works Administration, which that's where our townwide cleanups are. That's where the trash comes in and out of. The clothing allowance, which basically most of the guys use for boots in Public Works. That's $150 that they get to go towards that. And we're trying to update the Public Works Manual. And for those of you that don't know the Public Works Manual, if you're a contractor and you're coming into town to do subdivision or whatever, that's the manual that tells you how we want it done, how we want the water pipe put in, how we want the sewer pipe put in. And we just, some of it's outdated. We're updating it as we go, but we need to update the whole book. And town engineer Derek Walters is helping me with that. And Grand Junction has been nice enough that they gave us their Word document with their specs. And our specs are pretty close to theirs, believe it or not. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We're going to be able to basically City of Grand Junction, Town of Silt, change that out and be able to use a lot of theirs and not have to build it from scratch, so to speak.
yeah, I mean,
So-
I wish there was more consistency between municipalities in that, because, you know, they're all
different. They all have their different caveats. Again, we put money in it for next year, the clothing allowance, townwide cleanup, that CDL training that I talked about. Part of that will be in this Public Works admin. That also the payroll, the gas, that's pretty much a lot of me and my vehicle for the gas. So that's
Oh, okay.
kind of covers the Public Works Director.
But,
Why is there such a big difference in numbers
excuse me.
between 23 and 24?
We had, there was, I believe it was in the engineering. We had a bunch of engineering in this that technically we didn't need in that budget that we took out. I think it was engineering. There was something of that nature that we realized was kind of an oversight on my part when we did that.
Okay.
It was 108,000 in engineering and budgeted in 2023.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we didn't, if you look at the budget worksheet you have, we probably haven't spent 576,000 out of that budget.
And part of the numbers that Trey has for the 2024 budget, I hadn't gotten word back on whether the trash was going to go up. So I don't have trash, what we actually pay Mountain Waste comes out of the Public Works Administration. It's not included in that 274.
Oh, okay.
That's probably the big difference right there.
Yeah, that's a big
all
part
right.
of it as well.
Yeah.
So
So
that
townwide cleanup, that's the dumpster.
that's the dumpsters.
Every time I go there, they seem to be getting full. Is it worth maybe extending that to another week or something?
We-
or-
We dump them usually 3 times in a week.
Right,
Um,
so it's needed for sure for the community. That's what I was,
yeah, because we open up on Monday. A lot of times Tuesday or Wednesday, we dump them. We try to dump them again Friday because we're open that Saturday.
right.
And then if they get full on Saturday, we have people just pile it on the ground and we get them dumped Monday and then we fill them back up from the pile on the ground.
Right. But I don't, would it be worth trying to extend that like 2 weeks, or is that too much?
Just take more in the budget. It cost us,
I
it
mean-
costs close to $6,000-7,000 every week we have one of these.
Cause I know they get full, and I know that it looks a lot, like, all my neighbors utilize that, they're chopping trees, and it looks, for that period of time, looks really nice, I just didn't know
Yeah,
if there's something that worthwhile for. Just a thought.
we can definitely look at that.
And the cleanup week is next week, right?
Yes. 8 to 4:30 and then Saturday 8 to 4:30.
Yeah, I think at 24, I'd like to extend it to 2 weeks and just see. And if we're gonna have a code enforcement officer out there doing that job.
Both, we have a spring cleanup and a fall cleanup. You want to extend them both for 2 weeks?
Well, I think this one, if it's already set, maybe we leave it what it is, but we do that next year.
Well, I mean, next year,
Oh,
do you
next
want
year?
both spring and fall extended 2 weeks?
I would try it,
I would say yes.
and if they end up empty at the middle of the next week, we know. And
But
adjust.
like you're saying, with the code enforcement officer out there talking to people, maybe they'll raise some awareness and get some usage.
I think it'll get used. I mean, I think as long as it's there, it's gonna get used. People like to dump stuff for free, so.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I
I just wish it
agree.
was more than just track, just the limbs and stuff, but.
Yeah.
I know, I wish.
Every now and then we try to do tires or something else.
Tires the one year in there.
The electronic waste gets very complicated
Good,
because you've got to charge for it. Because nobody will
They got
just
one
take
in
it.
Garfield County or out there, they're gonna have one coming up. It's electronic waste. So people
Yeah, at
take
the
it out
dump.
there at no fee. It's free.
Yeah.
You gotta sign up for it, though. You gotta have an appointment. For the one out there. That's coming here in. Maybe it was. That was
Yeah,
coming
I
up
don't-
here.
I don't remember.
Is that the West?
Cause you can do
Garfield
paint
place
and
or-
electronic waste.
You can add
Yeah,
those to
paint's
our-
another big one.
For our newsletter,
Oh,
add those dates to the newsletter or something for the landfill.
Yeah.
Landfill,
Either
Jim.
was, but that out there is paint, and electronic waste. You gotta sign up an appointment, but that's free. Up to X amount, certain amount, so. But they have that every year, so I would see no reason we need to do it. I'd let them take care of that mess.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, it'd be nice to have a dumpster for, I mean, not construction trash, but pallets and, old lumber and stuff. Someday.
I think we start with 2 weeks of yard
Yeah.
cleanup and see what happens.
Okay,
That'd be nice.
we will make the adjustments to the budget for that.
Well, we're at about time, 6:57, so.
So,
Yep.
yeah. Okay, we'll take a couple minute break.
Jay,
What we got left are the big ones in the general fund, streets and parks.
Streets and parks.
There you go.
yeah. so
Speaking of
I'm-
streets,
I'm on
those
call.
jokers doing the interchange.
Issues, so I'm just kind of texting, I'm not.
Okay.
Playing,
I know.
playing Tetris,
Yeah.
whatever the new game, what's the new fad, the game? It's not Tetris.
I don't even know what the new fad.
Mario Brothers.
Yes, that's been fun.
Sorry,
It shouldn't
Right,
be
or-
there.
that's just what I heard.
They put in them big pilings.
It's big.
Yeah, they put in them pylons, so I don't see where it'd be
I guess
sinking.
it was like contractor had to stop because it was sinking and causing problems with the whatever they're
I
doing.
think
No, I heard
it's
they-
the back lot, it's the parking lot part. They said that And it's the same as what Gopher or Come and Go was, that back side.
It's Silt,
It's sliding off. Yeah, the building isn't
It's-
moving because them, good heavens, they had them anchors and pilings and everything
Yeah.
in there. Yeah, but that back corner is sinking just like Gopher or Come and Go was. Remember that sunk off that backside? Yeah, that's what's sinking over there.
But didn't they get all their permits? They were doing work without a permit or something like that?
Thank you.
The dollar store.
I don't remember. They've had
Yeah.
issues, a lot of different issues. But they've got them all straightened out at the moment.
At the moment.
We'll see.
So what's going on? Did you hear something about the bank? Is that they're talking about the old bank down here?
More,
Couple people in town got a letter.
Yeah,
saying,
a little more
"Are you
stable."
across from the library,
And our demand is high right now.
something about
I don't remember
redoing the
what day
bank
that
on the
was,
corner.
the 20.
24.
He's been talking about it for a while,
But
but
Tim got a letter here
Yeah.
last week because he rents from us. He said he got a letter now. So I'm sure it's with the so many block area about redoing that. I know they got stopped because
If
it
we're
was in
both there,
historic,
maybe they'll
and they
really
started
take it
tearing
seriously.
stuff.
oh no, they got stopped
I
because they
will,
didn't have permits.
Yeah,
I'll know
yeah.
for
And then the
tomorrow, I'll
people
make
that
sure
own
my-
it,
Right.
they
but-
decided to go buy an airplane and didn't have money to
Well,
finish
Yeah, wasn't it
what
some-
they were doing.
Yeah, a guy up in
There was a
Aspen. who
big
had it
disparity
for- Yeah,
between
they bought the plan.
there.
Yeah.
But
Including the
yeah,
appearance.
he said he got a letter the other day, so they must be gonna start doing
Yeah.
some.
Yeah, I'm not for sure.
Yeah, they tore the floor out.
It's a serious
The
group.
wooden
Yeah.
floor is
You shouldn't be
gone.
walking
Gone.
up in shorts.
Yeah, then they have that hole in the
Like,
back that,
yeah.
the last year or two, just
One guy had on like a
all that rain.
all short sleeve.
Yeah.
Like cargo shorts and sandals. I was like, what are you thinking? Like, huh, you think these people are just writing checks to anybody for anything? Like. But and then there were other groups that were very buttoned down, literally and figuratively, and had their presentations.
Yeah.
Some people were just, they're shooting from the hip. I was like,
I want 100 grand.
it's like, I want $1.7 million to do this, that, and the other thing, but then they had like little or no data to present, and they were just asking for money. This isn't gonna go well. Although from our side, I was like, okay, I like our chances better.
I've always had this idea to get a grant.
He had it at his house, he had where people left.
Water going away.
They're older Kiwi, and they're out there for, but they're just much cheaper, they're hanging out at his house, so you pick them all, just hung them all on things.
Going.
So that way there's put shoes on it, but people wanna go up and play, they don't have to bring their shoes. If you don't have shoes that you want to play with, you can use those. So that's- So you can already go up and just kind of throw without making the investment of buying some good shoes.
But
And their
it's
shoes are
transferred
pretty
in
good
its
shoes out
format.
there, Actually, they're not like they're all garbage, but they're not.
Water.
What's in it? Like, I have a set of shoes
Come
that
back
I
to
bought
same
them off of Pat.
Water.
Maybe they're $100 pair of horse shoes.
It's like what they say about matter, it can't be created nor destroyed, only changed in
Pretty
form.
much. They're within
Yeah,
range. But
10-year study for 15, 20.
yeah, they're all. pretty much- So, I mean,
I don't think it'd
There-
be
and the
10
thing
years.
is, like,
That-
somebody
it's
that
about
doesn't
10
know
minutes.
the block, they're not gonna
Even
notice
if you
the
pace
difference.
yourself,
Yeah.
20 minutes.
No, somebody that throws.
But I
a line
appreciate the intention, which
They
is,
could
I'd
throw-
like
they
to
could-
take 10 years.
Yeah.
Between even like an ounce or two difference, it's just in how they flip and this.
Bottles now.
But that's
All
as you
human.
throw a whole
Right.
bunch.
Gone anywhere.
Right.
Very cool.
But yeah, no, it'll be,
But
that's
see, that's
definitely
the
a good
kind of,
idea.
you know, from the beginning, I was talking about adult recreation.
Yeah.
Exactly, that's what I pictured.
Thank you. All right, can everyone hear us? Or maybe get unmuted.
I can hear you.
Okay,
I can hear you.
sounds good. The time is now 7:03 PM and I would call this meeting to order. Maybe have roll call, please.
Mayor Reichel,
Here?
Pro Tem Hanrahan,
Here.
Trustee Brentnall,
Here,
Trustee Klassen,
Here.
Trustee Flores,
Here.
Trustee Poston,
Here.
Trustee Seifert.
Here,
All right. May we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge
allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, be seated. The first item on tonight's agenda is public comments. Persons desiring to make a public comment on items not on the agenda, please activate the raised hand function in the meeting program. Or Sheila, any phone calls or emails in regards to non-agenda items? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, can't hear you.
I'm sorry. No, I did not hear from anyone today.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I do not show any raised hands, Mr. Mayor.
Right. And we have nobody to join us here in the chambers tonight, so we'll go ahead and move on to the consent agenda, which contains the minutes of the September 25th, 2023 Board of Trustees meeting. Any board members like to discuss anything on that consent agenda or make a motion?
Mr. Mayor, make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
All right. Motion by trustee Seifert to approve the consent agenda as presented, seconded by trustee Clausen. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Do any board members have any conflicts of interest in regards to agenda items?
Here.
For me? And do we have any agenda changes tonight by the board or by staff?
None here.
Okay. Moving right along then. Next item up is resolution number 29, series 2023. A resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Silt, Colorado, acting by and through its water and wastewater activity enterprise, authorizing the town to execute a contract amendment for the purchase by Garney Companies, Inc. of materials and items required for construction of the water treatment plant and directing the town to sequester funds. And I will turn this over to Attorney Sawyer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could have a minute to pass out a couple papers to the board.
Yes, please.
Sit down and let's get one on the tray. So that's such right.
You brought my glasses. Sorry.
As the board will remember, a couple of meetings ago, there was direction given to staff to negotiate a contract amendment with Garney Construction. Garney is the CMAR, the construction manager at risk, who we have been working with to aid in the design of the new water treatment plant, together with the anticipation that that would then proceed to a construction contract to construct the water treatment plant. The way that the existing contract is set up is that there was a schedule of services and an amount payable to Garney to assist Dewberry in their efforts to design engineer the water treatment plant. Due to the lead times for certain materials that are part of the water treatment plant construction, there has been a discussion about the advantage of undertaking an early procurement where the town would undertake a contract amendment with Garney that would allow Garney to go out and begin speccing and actually placing orders for these critical lead time materials for the plant. We worked with Garney on a contract amendment that would incorporate the early procurement.
That contract is in front of you in two forms. The first one is a red line. We did receive some comments back Monday morning from Garney's legal team. They're not, in my opinion, very material. Point a few things up. We did have, if you see in the final whereas clause on page 1, they corrected the total amount of the proposed early procurement. We have included language in this contract amendment in section 1.04 that if Garney moves forward with ordering these lead time materials, and for some reason the funding doesn't come through, or the town decides not to move forward with the construction phase of this project, that the town has the option to terminate the early procurements and to return items consistent with whatever the procurement contract is with the material provider. And, you know, the idea would be that if we can return something and only have to pay a restocking fee, we wouldn't actually want to buy those materials if we're not going to build. We would simply want to return them and pay whatever processing costs were required to do that. And that in section 1.05, similarly, that Garney would not get the contractor fee on top of the an amount for something that ultimately is returned back to the material provider. So we have for your consideration a resolution, and the resolution does two things that I want to talk about. One is it approves this edited version of the contract amendment with Garney. And I passed out a clean copy of that. So you got the red line copy so you could see these minor changes that were proposed. I also did the clean copy, and I would note that if you look on the last page of the clean copy, I've attached the spreadsheet of the early procurement items that Garney would be authorized to go out and to undertake ordering. So that's the contract amendment. The resolution approving this contract amendment does one additional thing, and that is it directs your staff to sequester funds out of your budget for a period of time until we get the loan funds. We cannot commit under Tabor to contract for procurement of things that we don't have the money in the bank to or financing to procure. The financing will happen. It's, you know, we've been talking with Colorado Water and Power Authority. It's going to happen in early December. But because we are authorizing Garney to essentially create a debt, that is, we want them to order stuff that we are agreeing we are going to pay for, there's this interim period of time that we have to make sure we have money sequestered to pay those bills. And so the section 1 of the resolution directs your staff to sequester 1 million from the Water Wastewater Enterprise Fund and 4.925 million from the town's general fund until the town secures the funding from Colorado Water and Power Authority. And that at such time as we receive that money, that sequestration automatically ends and those funds go back to being designated for whatever their previous uses are. If you have questions about kind of those amounts, Jim and Amy are probably the best to talk to. We worked with, well, particularly with Amy about where the fund balances were that we had the ability to sequester. And do we have Toby on the line? I can't see on the Zoom here.
I do not see him in the Zoom.
Okay. If there are questions particularly about the items that are included in the early procurement contract amendment with Garney, I think maybe Jeff would be the best person to talk to about that. And Trey has been actively involved in looking at the construction management, the timelines for things. And if you have questions about why certain items are included in that list, I'm sure we can get you the answers you want.
Okay, I have a two-segment question, I guess, on the 10.50% will be off water amounts on the section 1.05 contract fee. Bond amount of 1.25 and the contractor fee of 10.50% shall be paid.
So if you look at, trustee, if you look at on the clean copy, that spreadsheet that has Garney's logo up at the top. You can see each of the items that we will be trying to contract for early procurement on. And then because this is a public construction project, there is a bonding requirement. The bond fee is 1.25%, and then the contractor fee is 10.5%. And the 10.5% contractor fee, that comes out of the CMAR contract documents that, were approved earlier this year. And again, while we have not approved the construction portion of that, the 10.5% is the standard contractor fee that's built into the total cost of the project.
So that would be assessed if we, know that the loan has great chances of going through, but if it doesn't.
Yeah, so under the revised language in section 1.05 contractor fee, it says the bond amount of 1.25% and the contractor fee of 10.5% shall only be paid to the extent that the contractor has incurred costs for procurement of materials prior to cancellation. And again, arguably any kind of restocking fees and those types of things, if we were to have to cancel the procurement, the town would pay those.
So the 10.5% is based on that cancellation fee, stocking fee.
No, that might be the case where if we had a restocking fee that we would pay them 10.5% of that amount. Or 10.5%.
Okay, so yes, thank you so much. And then my second question is, will 2 months, let's call it, for when the loan will be approved? Because the town would have to, right now, be putting aside general funds in order to secure this procurement. And how crucial is it for the company, given again 2 months, to really not being able to do this at closing in December, given that there's just a 2-month period window? Like, I'm just trying to balance it out, all the additional contracting that we have to do, the funds, I'm gonna say pledge, and all of that in contrast to the timeline that Garney, giving 2 months, could not potentially wait for us to actually have those funds instead of having to pledge and doing procurement. Will that just, what's gonna happen? I'm just asking, like.
Sometimes though, on that procurement, I'm just gonna throw that out there as a contractor, you wait 2 months, you could
Plus you
actually
get paid.
extend another year.
Okay.
So
I
let's
just wanted
say,
to understand
let's
the
say this
consequences.
building, we wanna go for that, every month we wait could go further and further, cause it's, demand,
So waiting 2 months isn't gonna make it just 2 months longer. It could be much longer.
Yeah, it could be, we
I think
wait
that's
2
the
months,
question
it could
she's
be another
asking.
year.
That's what I wanted to
Yeah.
understand.
A lot of this
The
stuff
way
could
I
be a year
understand
out
it
then.
is Garney reached out to these companies and these companies are like, you're a year and a half out before you can get this, but you need to purchase it now to start the time. So if you wait, you're not starting the time now, and then time procures on top of that. So they're like, in 2 months, they're gonna be like, well, now you're 3 years out.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like just to guarantee safety, I think.
Or they may even tell us it's not even available now, and now
Yeah.
we're stuck. Then we gotta go back to redesign, re-engineering, because they could say, well, this building, we just can't get it no more, so we gotta re-engineer, redesign everything.
Is the contractor fee the same if we do it now versus doing it in 2 months?
10.5% is the amount of the
Is it-
contractor fee in the contract.
Yeah.
yes.
So they're not incentivized to get us to
But
commit to doing this early.
This is all about timing to have materials ready when they need to be brought
When
into
they
the
need to be
project.
available, yeah.
And trustee Poston, I think you raised a very good question, which is the town creating something of a revenue hole in this 2-ish month period where we might run into a problem? And I would admit, I would have an observation, and I actually would ask Amy to respond to this. And so the first one is, generally, these materials, at least in terms of the totality of what you pay, are not going to come due for 30 to 45 to 60 days after the order is placed. There may be some deposit that, that gets brought in quickly, but the full amount generally is not payable for a period of time. And so we have kind of been thinking that while we're sequestering these funds, we probably aren't writing much, if any, checks out of these funds, because the payments are going to come due at almost exactly the time that the water and power funding becomes available. And if we do have to make a payment out of the
General fund.
sequestered funds, it will then be reimbursed from the water and power funds that when those become available.
Okay, so according to Tabor, as long as do we formally pledge those funds?
The resolution approving the contract amendment directs staff to sequester those funds, yes.
However, you're just repeating it back to make sure I understand, because my brain functions well that way. So what you're saying is, once we are sequestering those funds, if we do need to tap into the general fund, we can basically borrow from it. And that's all fine. And then once those funds, okay, then you'll pay.
And then they get backfilled through the water and power.
Mhm. And I'm thinking it'll be just all journal entries, right, Amy? If that needs to
Yeah.
happen.
Yes, and normally how it works for us as a municipality, we might be required to put a deposit, but we don't normally pay invoices until the material has been received.
Progress.
Oh,
Okay,
so
okay.
if the piece of equipment is going to take 16 months before it's actually ready and delivered, we wouldn't pay for that equipment until 16 months, until we actually have it delivered. So sequestering the funds is what we need to do because we are putting the orders out and we need to show good faith that we have the money to pay for those pieces of equipment. But I do not see us paying for much of it in the next 2 months before we get the funding from the state.
Yeah, and if I could just add real quick, even though we're ordering it very soon, we won't know until after the loans have closed and are available, what the delivery schedule is. So the chances that we would have any invoices in probably in 2023 are pretty slim. And then the other thing I'd just like to reinforce is, I think I heard a couple of trustees say this. If we don't order some of these things now, it could extend the construction schedule by, a handful of months, whatever that is. And one of the things we think about is Dewberry. The longer that the job goes, the more their contract will be. So as far as construction administration, so there's a lot of costs associated with that. May be just one of them that we're trying to anticipate by ordering ahead of time.
I've got two questions. One for Trey. Is any of this in equipment the same company that we currently use any of their equipment?
Unfortunately, no.
So I mean, the way I look at that is fortunately, yeah, they're not because,
Well, yeah.
you know, that system didn't do what it was sold to us as. So I wanted to make sure we're not paying that company again for
No.
for more product.
The company that we bought through that does not have this type of processing.
Okay.
Process, and we're going through. The biggest one's gonna be the active flow and the filter tech. The active flow is the ballast and flock units, and the filter tech is the actual mixed media filter
Okay.
that does the finish water.
All right. And then my second question, and I wish someone from Garney was here with us to explain why we are paying the contractor fee is 10.5%, not on the subtotal, but on the subtotal plus the bond and insurance costs.
That's a good question. Generally, the bond, so the way this is written is state law requires that there be a bond for public construction contracts over $50,000. And the contractors view that requirement as a cost that gets passed on to the entity because they have no choice but to buy a bond for the work.
Right.
And because the logic, I believe, would be because they then have to expend time and resources to go out and organize the bond and to front the money for the bond, because that's a cost they're at least in the beginning paying for themselves, that they get some reimbursement from that in terms of the contractor fee on what the bond cost is. So that would be my guess is why they.
And not that it's pointed out in every contract I bring to you guys, but that final cost for most of the projects I do include a cost like that for bonds, because all of our projects have to be bonded by the contractor. So whatever it costs them to go out and get bonds and administer them bonds, we end up paying in the overall cost of the project. So that's not really out of the norm for that to be that way.
Yeah, I see that it's normal to go that way, but I don't know why they're dipping into a 10.5% on top of the 1.25%. I mean, those are.
Well, the 1.25%, that's the bond they have to carry. So that's not us giving them 1.25%. That is them having to get a bond at 1.25%. So it's covered in there under the 10.5. They're getting that 1.25% bond.
Yep.
And then the 10.5 is basically administration fees to administer that bond internally in their company.
Yeah,
If that makes sense.
I get it, but I would prefer to see a contract that said they're charging us 11%, not 10.5%, and then also dipping into this pool. That 10.5% in my mind should be straight off the subtotal. And it's, I mean, that would be $524,000 instead of $557,000. So they're dipping into an extra $25,000 in my mind by doing it the way they are. That makes sense?
Compounding?
Well,
That bond and insurance.
on the big, I guess in the big picture is what you're looking at it on the total project cost.
No, so just if we just look at the line for the contractor fee at 10.5%, that 557,000
Yeah,
is 10% of the subtotal and 10% of the 1.25.
correct. And so the
Oh, I see what I see what you're saying.
so 65. That's 542 times 0.105, so it's an extra $6,800.
Yeah. And I think that's where you end up with these. We have a contract amount that says we're going to spend this much, and we're going to make sure that we get every penny of that out of that. That's why it would be nice to hear Garney's explanation on why they're dipping into that. I understand they have to, some paperwork and stuff on the back end of this bond, but they should figure that into their costs.
It seems
I mean, if
like,
they're not paying the bond, we're paying the bond too.
And we're paying the bond too.
Yeah, it's not like they paid the bond and then we're, yeah.
seems like
It's a cost of it's their cost of doing business that we cover.
so I must be missing something because it seems to me like that's a procurement item. they had to go get that bond, like they have to go get the metal building. And they're charging 10% on the metal building, and they're charging 10% on this bond. We're paying the metal building too. And the 10%, and we're paying the bond, and we're paying the 10%.
That's
So
their
it seems
argument
like
on
a
it.
procurement item to me.
So you just look at it as a procurement. I don't look at it as a procurement item because it's not a physical item. It's nothing that's ever going to be delivered to that job site and used.
But it is a requirement of contracting with the
Yeah.
town.
And I have no
They have
problem-
no
yeah.
choice. Yeah.
The 1.25%, I have no qualms with. It's why we're paying that extra $6,800
$6,800 on that.
on that particular line item. And it doesn't seem like much in a giant project.
$28 million project, but it does.
But
Every
every
penny
$6,800
adds up.
bucks here and there is our citizens are paying for that $6,800 bucks. So.
Well, what I can offer, I mean, I think if we're gonna get early procurement going,
Sure.
this is what we need to do
Need to do.
today. You know, we do have the construction contract phase of this coming up. Where there will be additional document review and red lines going back and forth. That is an issue we can raise with Gardy as part of that.
You know, and in those situations, that bond is gonna be a lot higher, is gonna be higher, and the 10% is gonna be a lot higher on it.
And we good.
So we can maybe save some of that in at least.
Yeah. And we have to do this. We work with the UV equipment with Trojan. That's a company that we use where I work. And to get a tiny household UV light can be 6 to 8 weeks. So I can't imagine a giant UV system for a water plant is gonna take to get here. So I think we do have to go forward with this. I would like some clarification on that item with.
No, that was a good observation.
We'll raise that in our further discussions with them.
All right. Awesome. Any other? discussion?
My question is, I'm not following on page 1 where it has the 5.8 million number at the bottom.
Are you looking at the resolution or the contract, trustee?
No, the
First page.
Oh, you're looking at
Yes.
okay.
Clean copy.
Yeah.
the clean copy, the 5.8, and I see the 5.8 here, but then you have the 6 million below that. So I'm not following why this number isn't the 6 million.
Well, the amendment is the 5.866. That's the early procurement charges.
Okay,
We had as I indicated, so we do have a current contract with Garney for their design engineering work that they're doing with Dewberry. That is that contract price prior to the contract amendment, the 199,416. That's what we already are under contract with them, and because we are
okay,
we're amending that contract to add the early procurement.
got
We're
you.
just adding those two numbers.
Okay, now I follow. All right, thank you.
All right. Any further discussion? This is just an action item, not a public hearing, so. If there's no further discussion, would someone like to make a motion?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I make a motion for resolution 29, number 29, series 2023. With the new revised copy presented to us by our attorney.
Second.
Motion by trustee Seifert to approve resolution number 29, series 2023. To include the contract copy that we received from our attorney at this meeting. And that was seconded by trustee Flores. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And we will move on to the second reading of ordinance number 6, series 2023. An ordinance of the town of Silt, Colorado, acting by and through its water and wastewater activity enterprise, authorizing one or more loans from the Colorado Water Resource and Power Development Authority to finance water treatment system and related improvements, authorize execution of one or more loan agreements and bonds to evidence the loans, and providing for payment of the bonds from the operation of the town's water and wastewater system comprising the enterprise. And I will turn this over to Attorney Sawyer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we've got kind of a two-part discussion on the second reading of this ordinance. One is just to kind of go back through why we're doing this this ordinance now and what it authorizes. And then second, we have updated pricing and financial information relative to Garney's and Dewberry's work on the project. And Jeff and Jim Mann are here to help present kind of that update. So to give you the kind of the legal side of ordinance number 6, that is a form ordinance pretty much dictated to us by the Colorado Water and Power Authority. If we want their money, we pass an ordinance that pretty much contains everything in this document. The ordinance approves 2 sets of loan documents, which I have to tell you, we don't have the final drafts of, and yet you're going to approve those today. And that is to say that the Colorado Water and Power Authority after the large amounts of federal money that have flowed down to the state of Colorado and in particular to the Water and Power Authority, they have had to go through and rework some of their contract language in their loan documents to make sure it conforms with federal regulations for receiving this money. And as the board is aware that the town is benefiting from that federal money in terms of a good amount of loan forgiveness together with the subsidized interest rate on certain of the loans that are being provided to us. We have reviewed initial drafts from Water and Power. They are telling us that within the next few weeks, we're supposed to get what they're calling the final drafts. I will tell you, they're the lender. They say, this is the form that you will sign if you want our money. Now, if we find stuff in there that is objectionable, we will, in the first instance, raise that with Water and Power and say, hey, we need to work something out here, because it's probably not just the town of Silt, it would be other municipalities within Colorado that eventually will be signing these documents. There's a problem here. Let's talk about how to resolve that. But at the end of the day, what Water and Power finally says, this is the loan document. That's the document you're going to sign. By passing this ordinance does not mean that if something comes up in the next 60 to 75 days that changes the town's position to move forward with these loans and to construct the water treatment plant, we can pull the ripcord. So I guess, and that's what I want you to know, is that if circumstances change in a way that differ from the expectations you have today, and we need to make a radical course departure, we will legally undo this ordinance and we just won't move forward with the loans. So that's the legal side of what you're being asked to do today. I think probably for your interest, the financials are probably even more important and relevant to questions you may have. Why don't we let Jeff and Jim provide their updates on things, and then we're of course happy to answer your questions.
And as I've listened to you, Mike, I think that, and we hadn't had an opportunity to talk about this, but it seems to me that maybe it makes sense to go ahead and finish the ordinance number 6 conversation and the legal part of it, in accepting and adopting it, because we're going to talk about some details as it relates to reducing the, basically the direct loan. So I would say it might make sense just to go ahead and, unless you have a different thought, to go ahead and finish that. I don't want to confuse the issue that you've raised and explained to the board.
Well, I mean, if there are questions from the trustees on the ordinance itself, any of the provisions in the ordinance, I'm happy to try and answer your questions.
I don't have any
Good.
questions on the lease.
It's one of those, it is what it is.
It is what it is, yeah.
Sign if you want the money.
We have the big stick and if you don't want to get hit by it, then sign away.
I feel better that we, we have a ripcord to pull.
Yeah, it's still not a pass. We haven't jumped off the cliff yet.
Yeah.
We're still,
Okay, some emergency.
One thing that Jeff's observation or statements raised another thing I want you to be aware of. In reading through that ordinance, you're gonna see numbers for loan amounts that are higher than what Jeff and Jim are gonna talk about. And we had this discussion with our bond counsel. We've hired an attorney who all he does is assist communities on getting bonded indebtedness. And his recommendation was that in the ordinance, you give yourself some flexibility if some uncertainty arises to where you need a little bit extra money. And so the amounts in the ordinance, you should view those as caps on how much the town could borrow, but that the ultimate loan agreements that get executed by the town will have the numbers that we actually come in at, and that will include the discussion by Jeff and Jim about how to lower that amount. So simply because the ordinance makes reference to a bonded indebtedness amount that's higher doesn't mean we have to borrow that much. We can borrow anything up to that amount, but we can borrow less than that amount as well.
kind of like, that's our credit limit. We don't have to use it all.
Correct.
Or they'll come up with a number and then we'll tell them the number that we are joining for.
That's correct. Yeah. And that number will end up in the loan agreement that actually implements the bonded indebtedness that the town will assume. I should say the town enterprise will assume.
Okay. Back to you, Jeff.
I think, would you, Mr. Mayor, would you like to finish the ordinance number 6 and do the public hearing? And after that, Jim and I would talk about some of these adjustments, because what we have doesn't really impact the ordinance.
That's fine. If the board feels that you're in a position to vote on that with the information you have, you could move forward with taking action, and then Jeff and Jim can.
Just do a
Be more of
presentation.
an information item type of situation.
So I think if I was in the public, I would like to hear everything the board's gonna hear before I vote on before they take action on an ordinance. So I think we should go ahead and hear from Jeff and Jim before we proceed any farther.
Perfect. Well, we'll be happy to do that. So it's one of those, I was talking to Jim earlier today, and this is a time when I wrote a memo that I thought would, my goal was to make it very simple. And I think I kind of muddled the process a little bit. And Sheila or Amy, whoever's running that, you can go back now to my memo. And you may well have it in front of you. It's if you start down at the first few paragraphs in the background are how we got to where we are. And then at the new paragraph, we just, one of my one of my major focuses in this process is to do what we can to reduce the average ratepayer's monthly bill. And I know that you, as board members, have been concerned about this from day one. And so pretty much everything we've done over this whole period of time is to try to come up with ways to reduce that that monthly bill. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And to start, I'm going to ask Jim to go over the table, which is on the next page. And I went through earlier, I went through in this memo and talked about first column, second column, third column, etc. But I think we're not going to go through that. We'll have Jim talk about what he developed, and then we'll go from there. Jim?
Thanks, Jeff. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure because I'm in an interesting spot for a meeting. When you look at the chart that we put together on the page, this is basically a synopsis of the entire project. If you look at the total column, the total cost at 90% for the Garney construction for the wastewater treatment plant is 24,356,636. Then you've got the Dewberry Design and Engineering estimate or cost that they bid was $1.8 million. You've got the construction manager at risk, which is Garney, at 199,000, and then an item that we had underestimated, and then they came back with a number, and I think staff has done a great job at bringing it down. Construction management of $1,300,000. Then you have all the various sources of funding that you've got coming in, and there are two in particular that we want to discuss a little bit more this evening. But you've got the bipartisan infrastructure law principal forgiveness of $5 million. You've got the disadvantaged community principal forgiveness amount of $2 million. You've got the emerging contaminants grant of $1,645,000. Then you also received a disadvantaged community design grant in the amount of $300,000. One of the items we want to talk a little bit more about this evening is the DOLA grant, the EIAF grant for $1 million. You've got another grant out there for $450,000, and then $800,000 at one point was set aside by the town of ARPA funds to be used for the water treatment plant. So when you boil that all through, you end up needing to borrow roughly $16,460,636. You remember the way that the loan package that the Colorado Water and Power Development Authority put together. There's the leverage loan, and then there's direct loan. And the direct loan is broken into two components. One starts out at 11,645,000, has all this principal forgiveness, and ends up boiling down to a $3 million loan, and that's at 1%. Then you also have a supplemental direct loan in the amount of $1,189,825. That will be at 3%. That leaves the remaining project costs and grant funds to come off, and we estimate right now that we'll need to finance $12,270,811. Then you've got some issuance expenses that are going to be used in actually going ahead and doing the issue. This is an estimate right now. Unfortunately, the corp debt issuance expenses is probably low because one of the three borrowers that was going to be in this package has dropped out. So now you're splitting all the issuance costs with one other community as opposed to splitting it three ways. So there's probably going to be a little uptick there. So we end up at the bottom of the page in terms of bond sizing, a total borrowing package of $16,604,825. You've got the two components that you know about in terms of the direct loans, the one at $3 million, the one at 1,189,825. And then the last piece, which is the market rate loan or the leveraged loan, is $12,415,000. That's kind of the big picture. The thing that we wanted to talk a little bit further this evening tonight was this assumes that you're going to reduce the bonding by the $1 million of grant that we anticipate on receiving, but we don't have the confirmation yet that we are going to receive it. And then it also assumes that you're going to use the $800,000 that originally was set aside from ARPA funds for the water treatment project. And so those are two outstanding issues that basically we need to get an idea from the Board of Trustees on A, do you still want to use the ARPA funds, the $800,000? And B, do we want to reduce the loan package by the $1 million that we anticipate getting from DOLA? The risk factor that you have is that if all of a sudden the DOLA grant does not come through and we've reduced the loan package, we have to make that up with something else. And we kind of mused about that. We could use the $750,000 of unspent capital funds from the 2023 budget that was originally set for the boring project that you received in grants. And then we would have to come up with another $250,000, either from the utility resources fund balance, or perhaps the general fund can loan the utility the other 250 to make that up. But those are the two pieces that we just have to have some additional discussion on. And Jeff, hopefully I summarized that for you the way you wanted it.
That was great, Jim. And I certainly can't improve on that. That's really the bottom line. So that's what we're sort of asking the board about. You know, I talked a lot about some suggestions that Jim had and recommendations that Jim had regarding how much we should be carrying in our reserve funds for both general and water wastewater funds. But as we talked about that this afternoon, you know, we discussed the fact that we don't need to make decisions on those today, because even if we do decide to go with a higher level in our reserve funds, those things are not going to be achieved for several years down the road anyway. It's not something that's going to happen overnight as a result of all of this work that we're doing now. So we would just propose to bring that conversation back to you at a later date. I think today we would just like to get the board's feelings on, one, the $800,000 of ARPA funds that that we would propose to apply to the project, and the other, of course, the DOLA funds are, you know, if we get that grant, that's a no-brainer. Those were applied for with the understanding they would be used on this project. I guess the other part of that conversation is if those aren't awarded us, and we will know. There's been some timing issues here. Let me back up for a second. We're gonna know. We're gonna have a verbal on whether or not we're gonna get that $1 million on or about Halloween. Maybe shortly thereafter, we'll get an official letter from DOLA somewhere around November 10th. So there will be time then to, and then at the same time, we were just told, late last week, that we would be able to apply that $1 million if we wanted, well, all 1.8 million. We would be able to apply that to the direct loans. So you might recall that the leveraged loans are bonds. So they're the proceeds from bond sales. And so there was some difficulty in the Water Resources and Power Development Authority in telling us whether or not we were going to be able to use that to reduce those costs or those borrowings because of the fact that they would be selling bonds to cover them. When we asked if we could use them for the direct loans, we got the answer last week that yes, we could. So they will be able to be applied, and they would be able to be applied virtually when we need them to be applied. So I guess all that to say, we'd like to hear from you tonight to see if we should apply the $800,000 ARPA would be question number one. And question number two would be, do we want to use on the chance that we don't get the $1 million DOLA grant, would we want to use funds from our general fund and or our water wastewater fund to defray that, to make up for that extra $1 million?
You can't use money. You could loan money out of your general fund to your water wastewater fund, but that's a repayment.
Correct.
That is not going to create a total reduction in the amount of borrowing costs that the town is going to have. The question about whether you would, and again, in the event that for some weird reason we didn't get the state grant, whether you would substitute $1 million out of your water wastewater reserves is, I think, the kind of what Jeff is getting at, and the question, I think, that at least as I talked with Jeff about that is, those reserves protect the town in two ways. One is they're there in case you had a kind of a catastrophic failure at some other point, not your water treatment plant per se, but a tank springs a leak or a pipe in one of your water mains goes out, that you have a pot of money there to get on that right away and get that fixed. How much money you think you should be deflecting out of your reserves to be available for an emergency situation to try and reduce the amount of the debt that the town's going to incur. And unfortunately, the finalization of the state grant process comes close or extends just past a period that Colorado Water and Power Development Authority needs commitments from us to put together what's called the prospectus. So the direct loans, they're bonds that the private investors are going to determine whether they want to buy these bonds that include the amount being borrowed or lent to Silt. And they have to put that prospectus together. They have to know exactly how much we intend to borrow from the leveraged loans, so it can go in the prospectus, and that has to get out to be what's called shopped to prospective investors a certain number of weeks before the actual bond sale, which is anticipated to occur again the first or the second week in December. So
correct. Those are the leveraged loans. The direct loans, however, come directly from the state. And those loans, we could use these funds to defray.
So we find ourselves at this kind of awkward juncture of we want to be able to commit the state grant monies, But the state is telling us we have to give them the total amount we want borrowed to go into the prospectus, and those ships may not cross at exactly the right times.
Well, I'm not, Mike, you and I probably need to talk about that because we did get word back from DOLA that we would be able to defray the direct loans at some future date after after those dates early in November. So that's a different kettle of fish.
Using ship and
The
ocean
grant,
metaphors,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
right.
Okay, so if we borrow the full amount, including the million, let's call it $1 million, and then we do get the grant, Jeff is saying that we can utilize that to repay the direct loan, so that's a plus, because that would reduce the debt that way. However, if we don't get the grant, could we, as of that time, we would have borrowed the funds, use any of the general funds to borrow from it to repay a portion of that direct loan. Just approach it that way, kind of like an after the fact situation, being prepared for both scenarios. Is that possible?
So if I'm understanding this, we could, but it's a loan from the general fund to the wastewater. So either way, then the wastewater has to pay that back to the general fund. We can't just give it from the general fund to the wastewater.
Correct.
It's a loan from the state or it's a loan from our general fund.
It's a grant, but that, yes, in the big picture, it's either a loan from the state / bond, or
Bond.
it's a partial loan from our general fund.
Yeah.
And presumably we would loan money to ourselves at a less interest
Okay.
rate.
I'm guessing your interest rate's better
be
to
zero.
ourselves than someone else.
And we also talked about looking at ways to pay that back, as in reducing the admin fee or other ways to pay that back that wouldn't it just be transfers basically, or we just wouldn't pursue the transfer. We'd forgive it. But those are details that we can bring back to you. And I think we probably do need to talk some more about that $1 million because I think, given the fact that we just passed the early procurement, there might be some impacts there that Mike and I might need to kind of brainstorm about. So, in the interest of not continuing to confuse myself, maybe we should just talk specifically about the $800,000 American Rescue Plan money, and just make sure that you're on board with using that money. And I know we're going to use the money, but I think the point of the exercise here tonight is, are we going to reduce the borrowing by that amount? And I think Jim may have some updated figures on this, but you'll recall that we were saying that for every $1 million we reduce in loan value, we were going to save, I don't know, $2 or $3 a month on the average ratepayer's bill. So to use that ARPA money now would, and it's already calculated in there for now, so it would actually take it up by that amount, I think, Jim, right?
Correct.
So for Trey, if we don't use the ARPA money for this, the water treatment plant, does your department have something else that it would use it for? I mean, yes, I know you do. What would you use that for?
Well, the ARPA can be used for almost anything. But if we didn't use it on the water plant, I think one of the big projects we could look at is that Grand Avenue rebuild. We could funnel that money into that project and possibly do a couple more blocks than what we originally planned.
I don't like that. I think, I've been asking to like rob Peter to pay Paul to bring this price of this water plant down, and this is prime example of an efficient way to do that. I mean, that $800,000 brings the water, brings it down $250 a person for a home. So that's, I mean,
Well, it's actually figured in
great
this
use,
right
yeah,
now.
it's a
We'd
great
be
use
Raising
for
it
it.
by 250 by not agreeing to this.
exactly.
Yeah, so it's gonna be the 1.8 million. We'll reduce it by 250.
Yeah.
Right.
So the 850 is only gonna be $1
Yeah.
something. So.
And the Grand Avenue project's a huge project. That would be nice to get some ignition on that as well.
But I also, I do agree that we need to get these rates as low as we can. I don't think we should count on the $1 million EIF money in this factoring. I would like to see us use the ARPA funds in this. And then for Jim Mann or Amy, is there any way that we can pay the bond council and local council out of the water fund, so we're not financing that $40,000? I know it's it's a penny in the scheme of these things, but why borrow
Right.
$40,000
If you can avoid it,
if
yeah.
we can avoid it?
We absolutely could, and I agree to, with you, Mayor, on the $1 million. Like counting it and we don't know that we've got it yet.
Yeah, because we could use, that $1 million could be used for Grand Avenue, or is it tied to this project?
No, that's a grant application that was tied to this project.
Okay, but if we do get it, then if I'm understanding it correct, we can use that to pay down the direct loans, but not
Correct.
the leverage loans. So
Correct.
if we get it, we just pay one of those loans down.
I agree.
We wouldn't pay the loan down, we would just borrow less.
Trey, is that the
Wait,
pitch
yeah.
event on the
Maybe.
24th? Is that event in Avon?
Yes, that's the Avon that we gotta go give a presentation on.
I'll be there.
I'm trying to be.
If we can save $1 million.
When is it? The
I'll figure it
24th?
out. I think it's 24th.
That's right.
8:45 or something. Yeah.
9:45.
We can save $1 million off this. I'll be there.
It's on my calendar. I won't forget.
Okay, so I'm still trying to understand the situation on the DOLA. So we factored in $1 million into these numbers here, which we may or may not have. And our options are to pretend we do not have it and raise the price of our loan $1 million, or pretend we have it, and then if it falls through, we borrow money from ourselves to cover that $1 million.
Yes.
Is that
It would,
Well, I think, so the numbers that are in Jim Mann's spreadsheet that's up there, those they factor in the 800,000 ARPA money. They do not factor in $1 million of state grants.
I think it does.
yeah,
Oh, they do.
Yes.
They do.
They do.
The DOLA.
Yeah.
grant.
Solar transfer.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And that wouldn't be, like they were saying, 750,000 of it would come from the water wastewater fund that we had budgeted for the boring project, but we was able to get a grant to cover that much. So that freed up that money, and then the remaining would be that loan from the general fund.
Right,
So it's
Into the
basically
water.
So if we don't get it-
$250,000 that wasn't budgeted this year that we would have to be coming up.
yes.
We borrowing out of
Borrowing
general
it.
fund.
Yes,
I think
Yeah,
it's-
if we don't get the grant, we
$750,000
use the
was already
750 and then you just pull
That
250
water,
out.
wastewater.
Yeah.
We just didn't use it because we got a grant. So basically we got this 800,000 and the 750,000 is already accounted for.
Yeah, for 250,000, that's, yeah, I would do that, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I would say yes to both the DOLA grant and the ARPA funds.
I would too.
just because, you know,
Only two hundred
yes,
fifty thousand that we're basically gambling.
exactly.
Everything
Based
else
on
is
that, and,
And
you
then
know-
like the mayor said, we can actually take $40,000 from the wastewater or general fund and pay that fee. Which then we'd still, that would be ahead $40,000 on that
Yeah,
loan,
if we-
right?
yeah.
250
And I assume we have to pay that from the water.
We have to come out of water, yeah,
out of
no.
water.
yeah.
Yeah,
So then that'd be 210,000.
So we're talking about the 750 plus potentially borrowing the 250, and additionally, if we get DOLA to apply, maybe
No.
pay
We
the,
won't do both.
we won't do both.
It's
Okay.
a 750, 250, or the DOLA.
or the 750, 250 is the backup plan to not get.
Yeah.
If
Can I
DOLA
get-
goes through. If DOLA says no on their loan, on their grant, then we'd have to do the 750 and the 250.
Okay. And we don't have to come up with a determination of how much money we are borrowing anytime completely soon, because we need to hear back on we need to hear back of what the proposals are as far as loan commitments anyway. So we have options. So yeah.
And yeah, 250 is not a huge amount by any means, but at least the citizens know we're doing everything we can to try to reduce costs.
That was great.
Yeah,
Just to
bottom
give
line-
you more information, our current fund balance in the water fund is 1.75. So if you're taking that 75, if we don't get the DOLA grant and we use that $750,000, then our fund balance is only gonna be $1 million for anything that comes up.
Yeah, and that's where that's where I don't want to count the DOLA money for.
But wasn't the 750 gonna be used for,
That's
Right,
already,
but that still comes out of the fund balance. I mean, yeah, it was in the
Yeah.
budget, but it's us spending that money is gonna come out of the fund balance.
Balance, yeah.
It's in the fund balance now because we haven't spent it, but if we spend it the way you guys are talking, it's gonna come out of the fund balance.
but isn't it earmarked to be used anyway for a project?
And it is, but what she's saying is if we
Yeah.
use it, we left with $1 million. That will be our rainy day fund, and the water
Yeah.
wastewater fund is $1 million.
It was a funny, $1 million is not a lot of money when it comes to water stuff.
No, I know, and I'm just kind of like, well, why are we,
but then.
why wasn't the 750 kind of, set aside as
On
opposed
the
to
other side of
being
that,
part of the total?
on the other side of that coin, we're bringing our water fee up to par. $55 or whatever dollars it is.
40.
$40. So that 700,000 is gonna be covered back faster than when we were losing money, we weren't bringing any money in for that. you
But
know
we're
what I-
also adding more debt that we're paying in the year with these loans.
Yeah, and that debt is covered by the second phase of our price,
No, the
raising.
40 is the max of the raise. We only raised it $11 in
To cover
October.
the cost of the loans. $11 to cover the cost of loans, the $40 to bring the water plant operating back to right to where it should be.
So right now our base rate is 52. Operating where it should be is 85.
Yes,
We're raising it to 94. So there's only $11 we're raising,
to pay
or
the-
$9 that we're raising for the cost of the loan.
Yeah.
So then,
Jim, are you in agreement? You're on mute, Jim.
Yes,
so
I
like,
had to
okay,
find the right window, sorry.
let's go to the bigger picture then. Let's say, so before we were operating water wastewater, the deficit in the water, but we were still covering operation costs from the water wastewater side of it. So now we're raising $40 so that the water operating cost is covered by water. So that means there's an extra $40 that we didn't have before, that we do have now in water wastewater, one pot.
Right, but we also have $28 million worth of debt that we're having to pay on principal and interest.
Yeah, that was $11 we're raising on top of the $40 to cover that.
No, it's not on top of. The max we're raising it is $42. From 52 to 94. That's it. That's the max.
Okay,
It's not 40 on top of 11 on top of, it's $42.
what I'm getting confused at is we talked about we're bringing in the deficit for the water back up to par, and then we're only adding $10 to pay for the new plant. We've heard that several times.
Correct.
That's where I'm getting confused.
So we're not gonna build a balance by that $30 raise. That's gonna put us even. So to get to that 750, we'd have to raise it even more to start building. That 750,000, we have to add it more to build back up to that. We're gonna break even with the raise. Plus.
No, let me clarify that, Mr. Mayor. It's not that the raise to bring you up to kind of operating where you need to be operating produces excess funds in the utility. It produces an operating cushion that you should be operating with right now. So you will be adding to fund balance at that level. And then there's the debt service payment itself, which is being covered essentially by that smaller dollar amount. But in looking at the overall rate structure, you need to bring up the rates, the base rate and the volumetric rates to produce an operating cushion, so to speak, so that you're generating enough capital on an annual basis to build fund balance so that in the future, you don't necessarily have to borrow money every time something goes wrong with the utility. And secondly, you're also providing for a certain dollar amount of capital expenditures on an annual basis, again, that you don't have to go out and borrow for just the ongoing maintenance of the infrastructure that you currently have in service. And this is where I could have a conversation with Trey and we could get Trey going, and Trey could explain that he has a laundry list of projects that need to be done, that if you gave him a blank check, he'd be able to spend it. But we're producing a certain dollar amount that we can build over time, adequate reserves, so that you're not in a position where you've got to go out and borrow money. Right now, if you look at the long-term plan for the water utility, we really don't achieve real good fund balances for about 10 years. And so it's a long process to get there. And if we spend that 750,000, it'll just be a little longer. You'll still get there, but it's gonna take more time for you to get to a very comfortable operating position.
So Jim, just to kind of clarify or help clarify for them, with this rate structure, what are the reserves we're going to be putting into the fund on a yearly basis? $300,000?
Give me a minute. You will be putting in, basically you're going to start in a couple of years putting in about 150, starting out to $250,000 a year, above and beyond what your operations are.
So it'll be 3 years before we have about $400,000 that we have added to the reserve.
Yeah, we show that, make sure I'm in the right page again. Your reserves will, and this is where we still have a little work. We're not going to have good reserves probably. At this point, it's going to be 2028 before the reserves are kind of at a comfortable level. Prior to that, you're going to be, depending on what number we finally see and start out with, we're going to be operating in I would call interesting territory.
So then, so since we took since we've taken the financial burden off the wastewater plant, how much are we gonna be putting in a year in that fund from wastewater? That's
That
not a
fund
debit.
is, is going to be remarkably healthy. Because my understanding, the tap and connection fees mirror what the water utility has. So you're gonna be putting away somewhere between 600 and $1 million a year based upon the taps that we're anticipating occurring. And, you know, my cautionary comment on that is that I also understand that you've got a future
Big project.
wastewater plant project that you've got to address at some point. So, you know, it sounds like you're generating a lot of extra cash. That's not necessarily a bad thing in terms of being prepared to address a refurbishment or expansion of your wastewater treatment plant.
And if I could, I think might be a good time to point out that we are living within our means as it relates to our reserve policy that the board adopted a couple of years ago. So we do, I think we said we would keep 20% of our expenditures in the fund, and we've done that, and we continue to do that. I think when Jim talks about healthy, he's talking about looking down the road at a fund balance that that he's recommending, which is that whole other conversation that I suggested we come back to you and have. And I'm not here to disagree or agree with either policy, but I do want to point out that we have been operating in that with that fund balance as of today.
Will that still be true if we have to pull that 250,000 out?
You mean the 1 million? Because the 250 would come from the general fund.
Yeah, we have to make up $1 million. So it's
Right.
seven.
You're right. You're right. I'm sorry. $1 million.
Wastewater and 250 from general. Yeah.
We would no longer be operating within that 20% of operating expenditures.
Wouldn't
What
you
would
have
be
a
at?
reserve of $250,000 at that point?
Says current reserve policy requires 410,000 in the fund balance.
It's the fund balance is based off of, it's a percentage of what our operating expenditures are. In our financial policy that you guys approved a couple of years ago, it's 20% of operating expenses. So if that year our operating expenses were, 6,000, it'd be 20% of that. But in a year that it was only 3,000, or not 6,000, 6 million, but in a year that it was only 3 million, it would be 20% of that. You want to keep 20% of whatever your operating expenses are. And each year that's going to change.
Yeah, and I don't have that in front of me. But I actually, for 2023, I think our operating, I think I wrote that in here, didn't I?
Seems to me that whichever pot we get it from, I mean, it's gonna be the same, where taxpayers' dollars. I mean,
If we get it from the state and not from our,
if the DOLA goes through, that's ideal, of course, for sure. But for a backup plan, I'm okay with either way, whatever you guys think. I mean, I'm glad we got clarification, because then I'm definitely got a lot more clarification on how this is working. That conversation.
Would personally feel a little hesitant to reducing our reserves that
That
good.
much, yeah.
And I think that's what I was suggesting is that we probably need to do a little bit more work on the our nomenclature as it relates to what our reserve is or should be today. I think it sounds like we have a little bit of a disagreement on that. So we probably need to work through that a little bit.
Can we delay this
For the
decision
general
until
fund
we
is
know
different.
the answer to the DOLA grant?
You can delay. Hold on, because it is, so we'll have one more meeting in October.
No, this is the second reading.
Yeah.
Not of the ordinance.
Not of the
The
ordinance.
ordinance has to be passed tonight, but
Correct.
Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong. The board's decisions about how to handle the $1 million of the state grant and whether we count that in and have a backup plan that reduces reserves, or whether we up our borrowing to ensure that that money is always in reserves, that I think can be delayed by 2 weeks to our next meeting. And
Certainly.
yeah.
And the same goes for the $800,000 in
The ARPA
ARPA.
funds, I think, is a no-brainer. That one doesn't,
Meeting with
I don't see an issue with that.
Literally the night before.
Yeah.
Can't delay it 4 weeks. Come on, work with us here.
One more week.
Getting back to ship metaphors.
So then if we
Adrift.
Yeah.
If we do delay that, could I get a printout of what I was kind of talking about, so it makes more, so it's clear in my brain? The water fund, wastewater fund, our 20%, the right proper numbers and all that, just so we can figure out best way to put that money to use, or where to put it, where to get it from.
Yeah, and I think that's what I was saying, Sam, is that I think we can do a better job of laying those things out.
Well, let's look at that the next meeting then for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Because
know we can, but
we've had some additional information coming in kind of fast and furious at the end of last week.
Oh, I bet, for sure.
We passed those reserve fund policies. We should probably walk the talk, so to speak. You know, we did it for a reason, and it was probably something very similar, if not identical to this. Going back to the stealing Paul to pay Peter metaphor. This is the perfect example of why we did it then. I think we need to hold ourselves to that standard.
When did you guys do that?
that was last year.
I think it was last year, yeah, early last year.
August of 21.
Time flies, young folks.
Yeah.
Or here.
That means I didn't vote for them. No, so-
You're off the hook.
I'm off the
So
hook.
you're on.
That's part of the body you're now responsible.
Right,
for.
yeah.
You inherit those restrictions. Well, welcome to the club.
You inherit the policy.
Yeah, but kidding
So you
aside,
can try to
we
overturn the
passed
policy,
it for
but
a
hold on
reason.
there.
This was the reason.
Yes.
And now if something breaks, not that we want that to happen, but we dare say it's inevitable. We need to have those funds in reserve. That's the purpose of it.
Yeah, the financial policy says that the water wastewater cash balances should not be allowed to fall below 20% of the current year's operating expense budget before depreciation.
But theoretically, our water plant is broken, and that's what we're using it for.
Now we're being interpretive.
I'm just saying, if we use that $1 million or have to take that $1 million out of our fund balance, we will be significantly below the 20% of our operating expenses.
So Attorney Sawyer, so we would pass this ordinance the way it's proposed right now. We don't take anything out. We just pass it this way.
That's right. This ordinance has nothing to do with how
Okay.
you choose internally to allocate funds
Funds.
within your budget.
Cool. Okay.
All right. So we've had a long discussion. This is a public hearing. Is it okay if I open up the public hearing? Okay. The time is now 8:29 PM and I'll open up the public hearing in regards to the second reading of ordinance number 6, series 2023. Persons trying to make public comment on this agenda item, please activate the raised hand function in the meeting program. Or Sheila, any phone calls or emails in regards to this agenda item?
No, I did not hear from anyone.
Okay,
I don't show any raised hands.
thank you. And we still have nobody here in the chambers with us. So the time is 8:30 PM and I will close the public hearing and then open it up to further discussion by the board or a motion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the second reading of ordinance number 6, series 2023 as presented.
Second.
All right. Motion by trustee Flores to approve the second reading of ordinance number 6, series 2023 as presented. Seconded by trustee Seifert. All in favor?
Aye.
All is opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. Next item on the agenda is Intermountain Transportation Planning Region, IMTPR Boundary Report. And I will turn this over to Director Floner.
Thank you. As was mentioned in an earlier meeting, the passage of House Bill 23-1101, one of the criterias for the Colorado Department of Transportation was to look at their transportation planning regions. Colorado is divided into 15 regions, which include 10 rural TPRs and 5 metropolitan planning organizations. And if you don't know one of the acronyms, let me know. I sometimes forget, you guys don't deal with it all the time, and I might use acronyms. Just stop me and I'll explain them to you. I tried to call them all out in my memo. But anyway, Silt and Garfield County is the member of the Intermountain Transportation Region. We are in there with Picken County, Eagle County, Lake County, and Summit counties, and all the towns that are reside within them counties. CDOT has 15 of these regions. They need to maintain 15 of these regions, or it goes into the legislation body to redefine. And we would like to avoid that, because as with anything that goes into legislation, more than likely the more populous areas are going to get the benefit of it. And that would not help the rural TPRs at all. So they are they are looking at rebounding a couple of them. There is 2 smaller TPRs in southeast part of the state, the southeast TPR and the south central TPR. They have pulled information looking about combining those 2. And then the Intermountain TPR is the largest rural TPR in Colorado, and they are looking at dividing them into 2 separate ones and combining that other one. The factors that they considered, highway transit corridors, district boundaries, impacted communities, vehicle miles traveled, lane miles, truck miles, population trends. The list goes on and on. They had a pretty good PowerPoint presentation that listed all of these criterias and factors that they were to look at. And if you look at all of the data for them categories, even if you combine them 2 smaller TPRs that are in southeast Colorado, they would still come up as the smallest TPR in the state or close to the smallest. The IMTPR, the way it is right now, we are actually right behind like 2 of the 5 metros as the biggest TPR. So each TPR gets 1 vote. So if they do divide us, it would be 2 votes basically coming from our region. There was mixed feeling on the current IMTPR committee. Some don't want it to happen. Some do want it to happen. We did a poll straw vote, so to speak, and there was a few that said, let's not separate, keep it as is, keep going forward. And then there was those that wanted to split it. And in the PowerPoint that you have, if you go to the second page of that PowerPoint, if we can scroll up, Sheila, please. Yep, that one. Thank you. These were the options that were given if the TPR, the IMTPR was to split. Option 2A and 2B was eliminated right away. Option 1B was eliminated because Pitkin and Summit and Lake, they barely share a boundary, let alone any roads that interconnect with each other. So that one got eliminated. The two biggest options that came up was option 1A, which would be Garfield County, Eagle County, and Pitkin County would become basically the West IMTPR, and Summit and Lake County would become the East IMTPR. That one did meet some resistance because Summit County is so linked with Eagle County on transportation, jobs, and the mountain corridors that run between them two. And that's why 1C saw a lot of support if Eagle is up for splitting, because basically we would want to say, and Eagle would want to say, and well, that split happens, and they're thinking like Cottonwood Pass and Glenwood Canyon. That way the Highway 82, that corridor that runs through Eagle County of 82 would be in the TPR with Pitkin County and Garfield County. And then the other side of Eagle, the east side of Eagle, which is more influenced by Summit County, Lake County, and them, would be in a TPR with them. STAC met October 5th and received the input, and that's the Statewide Transportation Advisory Committee. They received the input from our last meeting from the Intermountain TPR. The completed study should be sometime in November, and in November it'll be presented to this transportation commissioners for CDOT. And if a new alignment is passed, the transportation commissioners would have to open the rule changes in January. This would go through all that procedure, and the new TPRs would probably May, June area. The new TPRs would be up and running, so to speak, if this change goes through. We don't know what's going to happen. With the data that they presented, my initial take, and I asked this during the meeting, was even if we say we don't want to divide and we don't want to do it, can they just say, yeah, we're doing it anyway? And they said, yes, they can do that. And if you was to look at all the, I didn't give you all the information on that other slide because there was a lot to digest. If you take all of that information and look at it, it poses some very good reasons of why the IMTPR should be split into two and why them other two smaller ones should combine into one. So I think with the information that we were given, the information that the commissioners are going to get, it wouldn't surprise me if they come down and say, yes, we're splitting you into two regions. And then it'll just be, what are them two regions? What are they going to be?
That's fine, but the ski areas are always going to get more money than we will, period. It doesn't matter how you divide the state up. The ski areas, the state's always going to see those as priority, and they're always going to give the funding to them. And it doesn't matter how you divide the state up. Small towns like us are always going to suffer. So nothing against you, but that's how I feel about the whole thing.
And also Vale Pass is eating a big chunk of money from our region and our TPR.
Yeah.
That's why I think the split would probably actually benefit us, like option 1C, Garfield, Partial Eagle, and Pitkin. I think that line at the canyon, basically then it's Garfield and Pitkin County fighting over that money instead of having Eagle taking it too.
Because Eagle County is just a little section on 82 between.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think that one would actually could potentially help Garfield County And Garfield County as a county has always been, you know, supportive of all the towns within it. It's not the fights that go on other places to get it away from the smaller towns. I mean, at this point, it's everybody against the small towns. I think that would give us a better chance at standing a fight, you know.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I'm glad you said that because when they asked for my vote, that option 1C was the one that made the most logical sense to
Most
me.
logical sense, I think, yeah. No discussion about combining that one in the south and splitting something in Denver to give them more voting power.
Nope. There was no talk of splitting any of the MPOs or the metropolitan district. This was the only two that they talked about. Well, these were the three regions they talked about combining or splitting
Splitting, so,
in the whole process.
all right. All right, well, thank you for the information.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Next up is the August 2023 financial report. That's over to Treasurer Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is for the month of August. I'm a little behind. We had an update with our accounting software that kind of threw the timing off. So next meeting, I'll be reporting on September's financials. So with August, 67% of the year has elapsed. We are doing well on our sales tax as usual. We're at about 78% of what we anticipated getting. We were flat this month with sales tax compared to last year at this time, with about a $30 difference, actually $30 less than what we got in August of last year. We're doing well in our use tax. We're at 80% of what we anticipated. And we're pretty steady on the trash fees, the water fees, the wastewater fees, and the irrigation fees. We're right on track with what we were anticipating as far as revenues go there. Like Trey had mentioned in his presentation with the Park Impact Fund, we have about $7,000 left in that fund, and so it'll take us a while to build that back up, but we have done quite a bit of work on the parks for that. We are doing well with most of the revenues. The water and wastewater fund is a little low, but it's for grants that we have, but we haven't spent the money, so we haven't gotten that revenue back as far as that coming into the into our coffers. But again, our budgeted expenses for the water was 5.1 million and we've only spent 2.8. So the expenses are down as well because we're not utilizing those grants at this moment. We're doing well in all of our other funds as far as revenues and expenditures, and besides the smaller governmental ones that we've used for parks and things like that, we're right on schedule with where we need to be as far as what we should have spent at this time of year. And I'll answer any questions you may have.
Any questions as we're in the middle of budget?
I just have a simple one. Will we next year start seeing separated lines for water and then wastewater funds, or how will they be presented to us?
So I am starting to do that, but I believe the feeling is that because we have obligations with that combined fund for the bonds that we currently have, and with the new loans and bonds that we're going to be getting, it's difficult to separate them because the water / wastewater fund is obligated. You will see it on the audit. I don't know, it might be 2027 before you'll actually see two separate funds in the budget book. Does that make sense?
It does, Amy, and it's understandable. That's
Amy-
my own question.
I had a quick question.
Sure.
Amy, are there any numbers on here that are concerning to you?
the fund balance for the water department is concerned only because I know of what is coming up. And I realize that we are getting a large pot of money, but that large pot of money is spoken for 100%. And we're gonna spend, I'm sure, every dime of that for the water treatment plant. I'm concerned as a bean counter who likes to have money for rainy days for other things that come up. And I appreciate the board wanting to utilize as many of our funds that we have to lower the overall impact to our citizens. I just don't want it to be to the detriment of what we can fix if we don't have, or what we can provide for them as far as quality of life if we don't have funds in reserves. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Welcome.
All right. Any other questions? All right, thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Next up, administrator and staff reports. Start with Mr. Lehman.
I don't have anything to add other than the closing of that that loan with that $300,000 loan I spoke of earlier. It was a $300,000 loan followed by an immediate $300,000 loan forgiveness. So we'll start drawing on that pretty quickly. And I don't have anything else to add. There might be, unless you have questions for one of the other directors who submitted reports.
I have one question for Director Fawner. Is there any, I guess, what am I trying to say? Any update to the possible code changes on the water service lines? Because I know at one time there's discussion of.
We haven't
wanting
got
to
into them
change.
yet, other than a preliminary discussion between me and Attorney Sawyer about a couple of them.
Okay, I
But
just
we haven't got
got you.
into it yet because pretty much, what is it, 13 that deals with water? We need to look at that whole code and make some changes.
Okay,
That-
I
that-
saw your
that's a good
crews working
reminder.
on the water leak and it reminded me to ask.
And I have one thing to add. I found out today we will have 100% design and have a workshop on the 100% design of the water plant November 1st. I'll be with Garney and Dewberry that afternoon, going over the 100% design plans for the water plant. So we're getting there.
We're getting there.
We're getting there.
Nice. I saw on Trey, on your report that you guys made some repairs at the skate park.
Yes.
Don't want to say it's 100% it tied in with a citizen coming in, but that's the way that we find out about these things. So as a citizen, you come in, you let us know, we can do something about it. So that's the process that happens. And, town staff has now made repairs at the skate park. So thank you to staff for getting those taken care of. I think that's all I have on administrative staff reports. So we want to do board comments and updates from the board, and we're down here.
Okay, so in looking into the analytics for the police report, I could see that there is increased enforcement on Main Street, which is great. Thank you, Chief Kite, because that has been a conversation from the board during almost every meeting that we do. Want people to slow down in Main Street, and looking into those numbers, yes, they are ticketing people that are going over. And we had out of 40, according to what I was looking into the report, 33 were located at Main Street. So we just asked the citizens to continue having that education. It's important to obey the speed limits and pay extra attention when you go into Main Street. I personally had an experience to where I'm crossing the street to get coffee, and I'm basically on the crossing line and cars wouldn't even stop. Just be aware of citizens crossing the roads as well. And please slow down, and thank you, Chief Kite, for listening to the board and increasing that enforcement.
All right, thank you very much. Trustee Flores?
So cleanups next week, get your trees trimmed, your bushes trimmed and lawn garbage and, yeah, take advantage of it. That's it.
Okay. Trustee Britt?
So look forward to some of the stuff coming up with the fall festival stuff for the Halloween. It's early, I know a meeting before that, but just remember, time changes is not here yet, so it's getting dark or light earlier, and so just really pay attention to the dusk times of bad light to make sure that we're doing that. And then if you're over at the Silt Island Park, or dog park, as you're walking animals, there's dog bags over there. Feel free to grab them and use them to pick up. And then if you pick it up, take it all the way to a trash can. I mean, when I'm out there, I'll grab several bags and I pick up several, and I end up picking up a couple I find along the way because they don't find them, they don't walk themselves to the trash cans.
Okay. Trustee Clausen?
I don't have anything other than, speeders out there, slow the F down. And good job, town staff, and keep up the good work.
All right, Trustee Seifert?
Just a reminder to remind people, irrigation is off, so winterize your systems. A lot of people forget, and it's nice out and it's time to make sure you get them. And piggyback on, we're gonna have the Halloween again this year. It's been a big hit every year, so that's about it.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem?
Nothing here.
Nothing? I've got nothing either, so thank you, everybody. Thank you, staff. Out into this water treatment plant, and we are getting to the end of it, so, or the beginning of it, whichever way you want to look at it.
It's just the
Yeah.
beginning.
The beginning of the end.
That was
So
optimistic.
awesome.
There's a song kind of that says that.
Next time on the agenda is adjournment.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by trustee Seifert to adjourn the meeting, seconded by trustee Britnell. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Better done.